a channel, do all sorts of things.
This is the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this is like TV is done.
Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. As you can see, we've made a few changes just overnight. Only yesterday we didn't have that sign over my shoulder, and there it is, the Mike Graham Show. Beautiful colour. It's a neon sign. We've been waiting for it. It was supposed to have been here when we first started on Monday. We've reached the end of the week. It's Friday. We've had 4 fantastic shows. Big audiences, loads of you joining in. We've had something like more than 500,000 views already this week on the channel. So we're really excited, really pleased. And today, once again, we have an incredible paper reviewer in with us. It's Reem Ibrahim from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Reem, very good morning to you. Welcome to our new home.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so glad I got to be the first guest to have the fantastic sign behind me on the show.
Isn't the sign great? It's absolutely brilliant. Coach, of course, the man of the moment who has arranged everything in this beautiful studio that we've got, and was tearing his hair out because he ordered it about a month ago, but finally came yesterday. And not only is it a beautiful colour, but it actually changes colour as well. So we can actually make it, you know, chameleon-like.
Say it's like a chameleon.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, we might match it up to the tie or the shirt or something like that. But we've got loads to talk about. Obviously, Rachel Reeves is all over the front pages today, and that's yet another U-turn, this time on helping out pubs, because apparently this is Starmer's 12th policy climb down, according to the front of the Daily Mail. Rates relief plan, which they weren't going to allow for hospitality. Now they've just decided to do yet another U-turn. Labour is gearing up, basically, to climb down on tax hikes for pubs, because an awful lot of pubs, as you might remember, over the past couple of weeks, have been putting signs in the window saying no Labour MPs allowed. So finally, it actually got to them, and they realised they made a complete blunder. We'll talk as well about latest authoritarian activity from Keir Starmer, who wants to ban X, would you believe? Absolutely unbelievable stuff. We'll talk about what's going on in Iran, because hardly anybody in the mainstream media is even mentioning what's going on in Iran. But overnight, there were massive protests. There were incredible scenes of proper Iranian flags going up. You know, the Ayatollah Khomeini possibly leaving the country. Reports that people were getting shot at and killed. Donald Trump coming out and saying he's going to hit them hard if they do anything bad. We'll talk some more as well about the weather, a weather bomb. Of course, it was that strangely named French storm that came in, hit Cornwall pretty hard. We'll talk about that. And we'll talk as well about what's going on over in Minnesota with the ice shootings as well. Before we do anything else, though, I have to say a big hello this morning to Tony Ross from Facebook, who's in the Maldives, and he sent us a lovely picture. And guess what it is? Check it out. It's a heron in the Maldives. So it's more good luck for us. This is our sort of symbol of good luck, basically. I've been stalked by a heron for a while, and so every time anybody sees one, they bring it to us. But Reem, very good morning to you. Let's talk a bit about Rachel Reeves. Front page of the Mail, front page of the Times, front page of the Telegraph as well. I mean, how many more climb downs can this government do?
It's absolutely insane. I just want to say about the herring thing, I love that you're being stalked by a bird, and you can actually tell exactly what type of bird it is, because I had no clue what a herring was before you explained it.
It's a beautiful bird. It's a kind of it's a thing that just eats fish. It just basically swims. It
Fantastic.
goes into any water that's near it,
Like
and
on
it's
holidays.
yeah, exactly. It's fantastic. And then there's one in the Maldives. There's one in Dubai yesterday. I haven't seen the one in London recently, but I'm sure we will. But let's talk about Rachel Reeves, because I don't know whether we've got a clip of her saying that she was going to put tax hikes on pubs, but the pub industry hates this government, doesn't it?
Absolutely, but unfortunately, I think it looks as though every single industry in this country hates the government, because
Yes.
what we're seeing at the moment is businesses across the country suffering enormously. Now, part of the problem is that this isn't something that has just occurred over the last few weeks, isn't something that's just occurred as a result of the budget. Pubs have been closing in their droves for years. So around 21,000 pubs have closed since 1980,
Right.
half of
Wow.
which occurred since 2006.
Mm.
So this is a combination of things. The extraordinarily high tax burden is part of the problem, but
Yeah.
also we're looking at things like business rates and regulations and
Yeah.
restrictions, and the smoking ban.
Yeah.
The fact that you can no longer smoke indoors in pubs, I think, has absolutely had an impact on the closure of pubs across the country.
And there's probably some pubs where you can't even smoke outside, right? Because they might have pub gardens, but people object to you smoking. I mean, I'm like you, a bit of a liberal when it comes to this. I used to be a smoker. I'm not anymore, but I don't really mind if people are smoking outside.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But the government last year were actually considering a ban on smoking in pub gardens and sort of the interbreeding of those particular areas. Now, I remember saying, I wrote this article for Spiked saying that this would be so bad because, Muslims, the only thing that they do, they don't drink, they don't do anything except for shisha, and this would completely ban shisha from the entirety of the country. The problem is, the government is saying they're going to U-turn on business rates only for pubs. And I think part of the problem is actually this is a concession for that industry, which is fine, doesn't go far enough.
Yeah.
As I said, I mean, these pub closures have been occurring before this government. And, actually, you can't just blame the Labour government for a lot of the problems that pubs are facing, because it's been happening for years. The Conservatives in government did nothing to save the British pub, despite all of the rhetoric saying that, it's so important for community, which it absolutely is. Pubs are such a brilliant part of British life. This government and the last have never cared to save the hospitality sector.
They really haven't. But the thing that astonishes me about this story, right, is that it says here in the Mail, it's literally 6 weeks, only 6 weeks ago that she put this into the budget, right? It starts to make you wonder. I mean, you work in the economic arena, right? I mean, it makes you wonder what advice they're getting, who's telling them that this is a good idea, and why they haven't sort of tested it out before they announce it, only to then reverse it 6 weeks later. I mean, it's insane. I mean, basically, they said this would send tens of thousands of businesses in the retail and hospitality sector to the wall if they'd done it, right? Officials says that this new package now will deliver a lifeline for pubs, but they're unable to say exactly how it's going to work.
Yeah, they've not actually even said exactly what the package is. I mean, some people are saying that they're going to increase support, like direct support. Some people are saying we're going to see subsidies. Some people are saying it's just the business rates concessions. We have no idea what this exactly looks like, but this is part of a wider economic malaise that we're facing. Britain is in economic decline, and so as a result, people have less money to spend on luxuries, and unfortunately, less money to spend in the hospitality sector, including pubs. Unfortunately, this is a part of the wider problem that is the government is far too big, taxing and spending far too much. And the problem is politics, right? It's the idea that the government want to increase public spending. The fact that we saw increased spending on benefits, even though the government said they wanted to reduce spending. We're seeing cash injections on the NHS. We are seeing huge increases in public spending across the entirety of government. And yet we aren't seeing improvements in public services. So
no, everything's getting worse, isn't it?
Everything's getting worse. The NHS, for one, is, the fact that every single winter, people say the NHS is going to collapse. This isn't normal, by the way. Every other country seems to have a healthcare system that works and can survive the changing of the seasons. But in this country, for some reason, we can't handle it. It's because we have a socialist healthcare system. Now, when you've got all of these things, where the government, the only answer they have is, let's spend more money, let's spend more money, let's spend more money.
Let's tax people more.
Therefore, we have to tax people more to get the money from somewhere. And lo and behold, 21,000 pubs since 1980 have closed, and we're going to see more and more close in the future.
And then they stand around and wonder why nobody can get a job on a Saturday, or teenagers can't actually get employed. It's absolutely ridiculous. Canastria, they're saying, get a neon heron and put it up on the wall. Yeah, good idea. Some of you might have noticed, by the way, as we reach the first time check, the clock's disappeared. But there's a clock behind me, luckily, so it looks like it's about 9 minutes past 7, or 7 minutes, 8 minutes past 7. Some of you have also noticed that today we've started with a guest on the left, because before we would have the guest on the right and everybody complained. So don't say we don't listen, all right? So that's exactly right. Now, what I've got here, though, as well, and also talking about the NHS, we do an after show every single day for people who subscribe to us on the Substack. And today we're going to do something groundbreaking, and I want to do a lot of this, actually. We're going to bring you the story of a woman who's a viewer to this show called Rachel, whose mother is in hospital, who has been terribly badly treated, who is about to file a claim against the NHS because they've treated her mother so badly. And we're going to get first-hand account of exactly what has happened to the NHS and how it affects ordinary people. So we will be doing those kinds of stories a lot on this show. But have a look at this. These are the 12, also the 11 other U-turns that the government has made. Family farm tax announced October 24, junked December 25. Employment rights bill started up on July 24, watered down December 25. Keeping the two-child benefit cap, July 23, junked November 25. Increasing income tax, November 4th, 2025, junked November the 13th, just a week later. Welfare reforms, March 2025, junked and July. No more tax rises, October 24, reversed November 25. I mean, the list goes on. Green pledges announced on September 21, ditched February 24. Grooming gangs inquiry, supposedly announced 2025 they weren't going to do it. Conceded in June 2025 that they were going to do it. Winter fuel payments, July 24, junked June 25. National insurance rises, 24, junked 24. Help for waspy women, they promised it in 22, they junked it in 24. I mean,
It's the
how can you
politics.
trust any of these people?
It's the politics of weak government. They don't know what they want to achieve, which is absolutely extraordinary when you think about the fact that Labour had 14 years to think about what they actually want to achieve in government. They were sitting there waiting patiently, waiting until the British public were finally, willing to actually vote Labour government to power. And then all of a sudden, what happens?
Yeah.
You end up seeing all of these U-turns. Now, I think out of all of the U-turns that you've just described, the most pernicious, the most dangerous, and actually the most upsetting, I think, for many people is the tax rises.
Yes.
Because the government promised. They promised at the election in 2024, they said, we are not going to raise taxes.
Right.
And they outlined exactly which taxes they weren't going to increase. And then what they ended up doing is, of course, the exact opposite.
Yeah.
They claimed that there was this 40 billion pound black hole that needed to be filled, which we actually found out was a complete lie. Rachel Reeves was actually accused of misleading the House of Commons as a result of misleading the government and misleading the public on the real state of public finances. Here's the problem, right? When you've got a government that wants to increase public spending in order to effectively give handouts to people that vote for them.
Yeah.
So we're talking about people that are on benefits.
Yes.
The fact that 1 in 4 working age people are now not in work is indicative of the fact that the government want to increase spending. The money comes from somewhere, and it comes from those of us that get up every morning and work.
Which is an ever dwindling number. And of course, the other the people that he's looking after, and every time he gets interviewed, Keir Starmer, mouths the same words: "We have increased wages. Wages have gone up under Labour." No, they haven't. They've only gone up under Labour because they've given it to their mates in the trade unions, in the NHS, the public sector.
And
if you're a public sector worker, you've never been better off. If you're a private sector worker, you're worse off.
You're absolutely
It's
correct.
that simple.
It's predominantly actually public sector increases. What I find really worrying actually when you look at the labour market is the fact that there are increasingly more and more people working in the public sector. So the government is increasing its size, and there are less and less people working in the private sector. And this is a huge problem because the private sector pays for the public sector. And I mean, I actually think that we can abolish quite a lot of government. As a libertarian, I really do think that the government is
I'd abolish at least half of it.
So I mean, that's very sad of you, Mike. I would abolish, if I was Prime Minister day one, I would abolish the Department of Culture, Media and Sport because we don't need it. We're
useless
before the government, so we don't need it. I would restrict welfare payments to 2 different things. 1, if you are physically disabled, and 1, if you are out of work for 6 months, and if you have been offered a job that is immediately revoked.
They've got to put a term limit on the number of months that you can claim unemployment in order to make people get jobs.
The problem is with benefits specifically is that you actually can get more money on benefits than you can in the private sector on minimum wage. Part of it is when you just look at universal credit, that isn't the case. But the problem is that there are just so
Yeah.
many
Well,
different
also look at
types
the,
of
but
benefits you
again,
can give.
the two child benefit cap, which
Yeah.
again they reversed because they said they weren't going to lift it, and anybody who said they should lift it was kicked out of the party, suspended, if you remember, from Parliament, and now they're doing it, and it's going to cost an absolute fortune.
And they're using emotion in order to say, you know what, this is about children in poverty. The reality is, I mean, the Institute of Fiscal Studies published a report that actually said this will have basically no impact whatsoever on child poverty rates. Because what's happening is these are children that are already in low income families. And what ends up happening is those families are incentivized to have more children.
Yeah.
Now, it isn't fair that those families are not making the same economic decisions as everybody else in the
Exactly.
country. You know,
Exactly.
can I just say, I would love to have kids right now. I know I'm very young, but my God, I want to be a mum so badly.
Yeah.
I can't afford
But you
it.
can't afford it. Exactly right. So people have to make those decisions. 30 minutes past 7. I think we should do we've got some breaking news coming across the front of the bottom of the screen. Absolutely amazing. Storm Garetti batters the UK with 99-mile-per-hour winds, heavy snow, and power cuts. It might get a mention, by the way, on Plank of the Week, which is coming out tonight. The first ever new Plank of the Week from this very studio, 7 o'clock tonight. Be there on our YouTube channel, The Mike Graham Show. Absolutely brilliant. And red danger to life warnings have been issued for parts of the southwest. Airports have been closed. Runways, travel chaos ensue. It's all over the place. But this is great, isn't it? We got proper breaking news on the bottom of the channel.
I love
Some
this.
pooch has pulled
Fantastic.
another rabbit out of the hat. I mean, what's going to happen next? Should we do a few super chats if we can? I know lots of you are getting in touch. Morning from Australia, says Kevin. Thank you very much indeed. Who is this guest? Could we have a name, please? So this is Reem Ibrahim. She's from the Institute for Economic Affairs. We've known each other a very long time. She's very young, but she's very clever. So we'd like to have her on. Free Speech for All says, going to be another great show today. Thank you very much indeed. You can do a super chat anytime you like. Seating is more natural, says Tricia. People like the fact that I'm now sitting on the right instead of the left. I'd love to see Samara Gill on your show. Nothing to do with the fact that she's the most stunning looking woman in the world. Alex Phillips too says explore with Jeff. Well, we'll do what we can, but they do work somewhere else, so they might not be allowed. Let's go and talk to who's this? Was that another super chat from Cornwall? Did I miss that one? Just to say, good morning, Mike. Just to say, don't worry, I survived the night in Cornwall. I mean, I have to say, I mean, the way that some of the news is being reported this morning, you'd think there was some kind of calamitous event that had happened and everybody's stuck under 50 feet of snow.
Cannot handle bad weather
I
in the
know.
UK. Every single time there is a gust of wind, we get an
Yes.
alert from the BBC saying that there's dangerous weather out there and we all need to be careful.
Yeah.
Why can't we just look after
I
ourselves?
know. It really is daft, isn't it? Up in Scotland, the government's telling people not to go out. So I'll go out if I want, thanks. You know.
Just say I was in near the Cotswolds earlier this week
Yeah.
and took days off work, and it was lovely, and it was snowing outside, absolutely beautiful, and I swam in the outdoor pool in the freezing cold.
Wow. And was it a heated pool?
It was slightly heated, but to be honest, I mean, you can't imagine the energy costs it took to heat that.
Oh yeah, I know, unbelievable stuff. But tell you what's interesting, and I don't know about you, but I've been watching, like a lot of people have, certainly on social media, all the events that are going on in Iran.
Yes.
The front page of the Telegraph, one of the few main newspapers that are actually touching it today. Iran has shut down the internet across the entire country as thousands take to the streets in the Islamic Republic. I think we've got some footage from last night. There were incredible scenes in all sorts of places around the Iranian capital, in other parts of the country as well. People just revolting against the Ayatollah. Some suggestion that the Ayatollah might have disappeared already. Some of the sort of ruling classes off to Moscow, because of course that's all part of the, what you might call the axis of evil. It's Venezuela, it's Iran, it's Russia. It's a fascinating story. But I was driving in this morning and Times Radio had the news on. They didn't mention it.
No.
Not one mention of Iran. The BBC on their website have got it, but quite a long way down. I mean, this is a massive story, isn't
I
it?
think it's fear that Trump is doing so much good in the world internationally, or at least in international policy. I mean, look at what's happened. We've got the absolutely disgusting and horrendous Maduro
Yeah.
now in prison,
Yes.
awaiting trial in the US, and I think that's a really important.
You have somebody that you know personally in Venezuela in jail, right?
Yeah, so Jesus Almas was an intern at the IEA, the think tank that I work for in London, and he's been in prison in Venezuela for about 13 months. There is currently, I mean, now a question about whether or not he will be one of the political prisoners that will be released. But he worked on Maria Machado's campaign, the potential opposition leader,
Yeah, the Nobel Prize.
the Nobel Prize winner, and she's been in hiding for a very long time as well. And Jesus has unfortunately been in prison for 13 months
Wow.
because he's one of about 3,000 political prisoners in Venezuela. We have to be very clear about this. Maduro is a disgusting dictator.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
one of
people
the
disappeared under his watch, didn't they?
Yeah, people have been disappearing. We know that Jesus, for example, this intern that we had who is in prison, he's been in one of the well-known torture prisons in Venezuela. So it's pretty scary. I
Yeah.
also know that there are women. There's a woman that I know, her name's Maria. She's also in prison. She works for, well, she's been an activist in the Ladies of Liberty Alliance groups that I've been involved with. It's insane. These are people that have been fighting for. What I find fascinating, Mike, is that these are people that are fighting for free markets, for smaller government, for lower taxes, for less corruption in government in
Yeah.
Venezuela, and they have risked their lives to do so. The very things that I argue for, and that we all argue for
Yeah.
in the UK, these people have risked their lives for that. So when we're looking at what's happening
And
over
this is,
in
and in Iran, they're doing the same thing.
like
I mean, there are reports overnight which we can't confirm. We don't, we don't have a correspondence in Iran, unfortunately. We haven't quite grown to that level yet.
one if you like.
I bet you probably could. Well, we may well do that later on. But I mean, let's have a look. I think we've got a couple of clips. Have we got something from overnight in Iran, Pooch? Thanks. Let's have a look at this. As you can see, there's fires being lit. There's thousands of people out on the streets. They're completely and utterly revolting against the ruling classes. The Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and the rest of the government are thought to have left the country. It's not clear yet whether the ruling sort of elite and the firing of bullets and things that people is still going on. There are reports overnight, as I say, that people have been shot, people have been killed.
Well, there's a blackout as well.
And they've also cut the internet. So, but thanks to Starlink, and Elon Musk and the modern world of technology in which we now live, you can't silence people anymore.
It's
and it's really quite fascinating.
You're absolutely right, Mike. And I think what's so fascinating about this, you've hit the nail on the head here. Technology frees us from the shackles of authoritarian governments.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, you have so many people across Iran that are now seizing the opportunity to fight for the liberation of their country, a country that they love so dearly. And they're able to do that because they see that there is the potential for this to actually happen.
Yeah.
There is momentum. There may be international support, perhaps.
Yeah.
And they're ready for it. What I find fascinating about the Iranian people is actually that, when you look at polling, when you look at what is actually being suggested, most of them do not want this government.
No, of course they
Most
don't.
of them are
Well,
extraordinary.
again, it's a terribly, it's a theocracy. Women are told they can't. I mean, we've seen many women very bravely just shaking their long hair and going, "We're not doing what we're told." They're not supposed to show their hair. They're not supposed to show their faces. They're supposed to cover themselves up. I mean, the people in Iran and before actually the Ayatollahs took over, and you might say the Shah of Iran wasn't exactly the greatest person in the world either, but you see pictures of sort of downtown Tehran back in the 70s, and it looked like Paris.
Mini skirts and
It's amazing. But talking of and we'll come back to Iran in a second. But talking of authoritarian figures, guess what Keir Starmer wants to do? Talking about technology, piece of the Telegraph. He wants to ban X. He's going to say to Elon Musk that they're going to ban X because of this row over an AI tool on Grok, which is undressing women and children in photographs. He basically says he's going to use the powers of the Online Safety Act. I mean, you can't ban X, can you?
Absolutely pathetic. He
Stupid
said,
idea.
"This is disgraceful, it's disgusting, and it's not to be tolerated. X needs to get their act together," and then has subsequently not ruled out banning the platform altogether, which I think is absolutely extraordinary. Can I also just say, there are many people that are on the right that are also talking about this and getting very upset about the fact that Grok can make people wear bikinis. And so you've got a lot of very attention-seeking young women on social media that are taking photographs of themselves and putting it into Grok and asking it to put them in a bikini, and then being horrified, posting it and saying, "Oh my God, how disgusting Grok is that it's put me in a bikini because I asked for it to put me in a bikini." It's absolutely
That's mad.
It's mad. We don't.
So they're actually deliberately trying to offend themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody put me in a bikini, believe it or not. I thought I looked all right, to be honest. I mean, I didn't mind,
What I find hilarious is we don't do this with any other platform. So Photoshop, for example, could put you in a bikini.
Right.
We don't say we're going to ban Photoshop. We understand that the person that is asked to put to put that photograph and
Yeah.
make you into a naked person is the bad person, not the Photoshop itself. Therefore, why don't we apply that same logic to Grok?
Right.
Grok AI can be used for terrible things. It can also be used for amazing things.
Yeah.
Why should we then start blaming the platforms? Surely it's the really disgusting mental users that are putting random women in bikinis that are the problem,
Yeah.
right? We understand that it's the users when it comes to Photoshop. We should apply the exact same logic when it comes to AI. Now, part of the problem, I think, is there is just constant fear around technology and the future and its uses.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not
And
a very
politicians don't understand it clearly, do they?
understand
I
it.
mean, all you've got to do is look at the way that Keir Starmer uses X,
Mental.
which is so wooden,
It's
right? He
so
puts out these ridiculous videos. He put one out the other day talking about how they throw. Yeah, he sounds like that Zippy from Rainbows. And he's basically going, well, frozen rail fares, and then you go and see how much it costs to go to Manchester on a train. It's about 300 quid,
Yeah.
and you go, well, nobody can afford to travel anywhere, and also they haven't got a job to travel to. So what's the point of freezing the rail fare?
There aren't any jobs anyway.
Yeah, absolutely right. But let's have a look at back to the Iranian story, because one of the things that I found astonishing this morning was, as I say, Times Radio not covering it, but also Donald Trump overnight was interviewed by Sean Hannity on Fox News. You know, one of the top interviewers on Fox News, one of the biggest names, gets an interview with Donald Trump on a regular basis. He actually asks him about Iran, and Donald Trump says, if they start shooting people, we're going to hit them hard. Let's have a look at that. I think we might have that.
Are you following the protesting that is taking place all over the country of Iran now?
Yeah, I'm following it very closely.
And have you read that the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has a plan B to go to Russia?
Or someplace, yeah. He's looking to go someplace.
Do you believe that Iran, you think the country is on the verge of collapsing?
Well, it could be. I mean, what they've done is in the past, they've started shooting the hell out of people, and all of a sudden people without any weapons whatsoever are standing there and you have machine guns gunning them down, or they take them to prisons and then hang them and kill them. So they played rough, and I said, if they do that, we're going to hit them very hard. We're going to hit them hard. We're ready to do it. If they do that, we're going to hit them hard.
So Donald Trump actually saying we're going to hit them hard, the Iranian regime, if they start killing their own people. How is that not a news story in any country?
It's insane that it isn't. I mean, on the front pages of most papers. It's fascinating because this is potential. I mean, this is different to Venezuela because it's potential nuclear. I mean, Iran have weapons. I mean, we don't know how many weapons they have. We don't know what weapons they have, but they almost certainly have some form of weapon of mass destruction. So this could be quite scary.
Well, I mean, I was listening to a report the other day from over the seizing of this tanker in the North Atlantic, which was obviously some kind of rogue tanker, which is now Russian flag on it. And there was a very clear link between, in fact, it was Tom Tugendhat, I think, who was talking on LBC. Andrew Marr didn't believe him, so he had to convince Andrew Marr that there was actually a link between the Hezbollah, Iran, and Venezuela. And an awful lot of the weaponry that comes to Iran comes from Venezuela because they're manufacturing it there as a result of the income they're making from the drug sales. And, you know, the idea that, again, people who think of themselves as important British media figures don't know this.
No.
You're kind of going, what's wrong with you?
No, it's insane. It's exactly as you described it earlier, Mike. It's the axis of evil that we're currently facing. People don't understand that we are entering a new Cold War, and the West and freedom is winning. And I do think part of it is because we've got a very strong president of the United States who is actually able to confront these evils. And it's interesting, I think, because a lot of people would say, well, intervention in the international order is not always helpful. But I think that when we've got the toppling of disgusting dictators that are putting thousands of political prisoners, innocent people that are fighting for liberty in prison, clearly that's a good thing. And clearly, if we see the toppling of the Ayatollah, that's a good thing because we'll see the liberation of millions of Iranians that want to be liberated. They want women to be educated. They want women to make choices
They don't
about
want to be
wear.
downtrodden and banned from doing everything that's fun by a bunch of old men who are, you know, tailored and tied to some ridiculous religion.
I also say, I mean, I grew up in a Muslim family and I understand a little bit about what Islam says. It's completely un-Islamic to say that women should be forced to wear anything. Women in Islam are not allowed to be forced to wear the hijab. They're not allowed to be forced to dress a certain way. That's completely forbidden. It is effectively political Islam that has driven the Iranian government, and indeed, of course, what's happened in Afghanistan. I think women, specifically in Afghanistan and Iran, are some of the most oppressed in the world because of government.
Right.
It's the government that have made these things illegal. It is the
But then there are
government that
communities in this
increase it.
country where the same thing happens, and that is presumably pressure from the culture of the people
Indeed.
living in this
Pressure
country.
is different to the law, though.
Yeah,
I mean, cultural pressure, one can leave.
yeah.
And thankfully, because we live in the great United Kingdom, we are actually, you know, if you are in those communities, you see so many stories of women that leave these very, very oppressive communities in Great Britain that unfortunately exist. And they're able to leave because they live in a free country. That is very, very different. Cultural pressure is very, very different, and something I know of very well. It's very different to the law.
Mm.
And in Iran, a woman can be literally murdered by the police, murdered by the state, for uncovering
Yeah.
her hair.
Unbelievable stuff. As you can see, if you've just joined us, the time is now 7:27, coming up to 7:28, and we'll be hearing from Edward Hughes soon. Edward Hughes with the news. This one from the Mike Graves show is an actual one. We've received a note from Edward Hughes. It's snowing and raining and windy because it is winter. Yeah, I know. Absolutely right. We'll have the news with him coming up. You might have noticed as well a couple of new developments in the show. We've got now a new sign, the Mike Graham show behind me. It's a neon sign. Somebody bought a neon sign. Where's that song from? We're doing a quiz on that later on. And we've now got a ticker across the bottom of the page there, the front of the television. Part measures to improve road safety and accessibility out there. According to a piece in the Telegraph, Storm Goretti made landfall. A weather bomb brought winds of up to 100 miles an hour to southwest of this country. Wales got a lot of it as well. The Midlands, South Yorkshire. Network Rail suspended all trains in Cornwall from 6 p.m. last night. 30 flights cancelled from Heathrow. Motorists told to only use the roads in emergencies. I mean, in London and the southeast, it's a bit rainy and a bit a bit sort of, you know, sleety, but it's not that bad. But it is pretty. It's been a pretty horrible week. Dozens of schools in the Midlands and Wales preparing to close owing to snowfall. Unions also urging businesses not to pressure workers into making dangerous journeys. So let's all work from home, shall we? A couple more stories to tell you as well. Have we got a message from Edward Hughes, or is that it? Was that the message? I think that was the message. A couple of stories to mention to you. Also, when we talk about, you know, what Britain's reaction is going to be to all of this turmoil around the world, particularly in not only the US of A and with Greenland going on, with Venezuela, with Iran, now with Ukraine. The army, according to a piece in the Telegraph front page, Britain's top military chief has warned Keir Starmer the Ministry of Defence faces a £28 billion funding shortfall.
It's
So
insane.
where are they going to, you know, how are they going to put these boots on the ground in Ukraine?
Well, we can't, right? We actually, you know what's really scary about all of this? If we went to war tomorrow, if we were invaded tomorrow, we wouldn't be able to defend ourselves.
No.
The government would fall.
Well, we can't defend our own borders now.
Well, indeed, but you know the fact that we think about this as immigration, that's a separate issue. But actually, if we were invaded, we would not be able to defend ourselves. Our army is dwindling. We have nobody in it, and my God, I've heard stories from people that are in the army that say even those that are in it are pretty weak. I mean, not to go down the whole culture war woke stuff, but I do think that there is a real problem with the fact that the military, even those that are in it, are not, some of them are not particularly well versed to reality and well versed to the fact that you are there
I mean, you want the army basically to be full of people who are trained to kill.
Yeah.
Not trained to tell you what their pronoun is, or trained to make sure that, I mean, somebody told me, and I talked to many veterans who are in and out of the army and even now still have associations with it. And I was told by a guy who was a major in the British Army, he got a phone call from somebody in the Ministry of Defence asking him to go and check the notice boards in a particular army encampment to check that the word manpower wasn't being used on any of their announcements. And you just go, yeah, never mind that. There's a guy outside with a gun who's trying to break into the country. Yeah.
It's absolutely mental. I was in the Falkland Islands last year in February.
Oh yes, you saw the penguins. That was cool.
It was very beautiful. And I also spent a few days hanging out with, very randomly, former members of the Welsh Guards that fought in the Falkland Islands War, and they were talking about it in sort of, it was actually really lovely because we were there, and they were able, for a lot of them it was the first time they returned back to the war, where they actually fought in the war. They told me where people died, and my friend, this person, had a wife and kids, and he died here, and it was quite therapeutic sort of for them, and they were telling me all these new stories. And what was abundantly clear is going to war in the 1980s was very, very different, and the approach that they had, the fact that they were in the military, the fact that they were there to, and one of them described himself as a killing machine. That's what they were trained to be. That approach, I think, has been lost, and I'm really quite concerned about it.
I know it really isn't their first priority. It should be. It's coming up to 7:32. We'll have the news with Edward Hughes very shortly. A couple of other stories just to get on with, though. How about this one? Dogs can learn new words by ear wigging. I don't know if you've got a dog, but behind me, somewhere, if you look, I think carefully, I think it's that way. There you go. There he is. Ziggy. That's my dog. It was National Labrador Day yesterday. And there he is there. It was drawn beautifully for me during lockdown by one of my listeners. Anyway, it says here, dogs can learn words by overhearing human conversations. Duh. Well, I think we know that. It says many dog owners have to avoid saying certain words like walk, park, or treat because they prompt an excited reaction to the animal. And I know that there'll be people listening to this now and watching the show going, stop saying walk. Stop saying walk. Don't say walkies because the dog's jumping up and down. Because a lot of dog owners and cat owners love to watch the show with their dogs and cats because I don't know what it is, but the dogs and cats love watching me. I don't know why. Anyway, it says here, basically, a study has found that canine savants are able to learn words such as just as well by eavesdropping as from active training. The study found that the animals can understand the names of toys just by listening to two humans speaking while holding the item. So, I mean, Ziggy, for example, has got a lot of toys. He's got Bunny. He's he's ripped apart a couple of times.
Oh.
He's got Blanky, with several Blankies that he's got. He's got, and also people buy him these indestructible toys, and usually he rips them apart within about sort of 15 minutes. He's now 12. He's getting on a bit. He's quite slow but he's wonderful. He's a beautiful dog. Pooch has got two beautiful dogs as well, and he knows all about how excited they get. He was telling me the other day when he was over in Europe and he was visiting somewhere, and as soon as the animals got out of the car, they just ran and knew exactly where they were going because they just know instinctively, this is going to be fun. And they're just bounding around. It's absolutely fantastic. So if you've got a dog, don't keep saying walk all the time when you think he's not listening, because he's always listening. It's as simple as that. And finally, I just quite like this story. It's about a fraud detectorist, right? Because we always try and do something a little bit funny to cheer people up. This is a guy who is in court, I think, for fraud, or he's been accused of it. An amateur metal detectorist. He claimed he'd found an 1800-year-old Roman brooch, right? Jason Price, 54 years of age, received national publicity after the horse figurine was supposedly unearthed in 2019. It turns out he bought it on eBay. I mean, seriously. He admitted 4 charges of fraud by false representation. He was given a 12-month sentence, suspended for 2 years, ordered to pay £1,000 in costs and £3,250 in compensation to Lincolnshire County Council.
Poor bloke just wanted to be famous, didn't he?
He did. It's always dodgy, isn't it, though, when you go and when you see these people with metal detectors and things, and you think,
I always think that they're mental. Like, what are you doing with your life?
I know.
Go and get a real job. But there aren't any. So
no. So maybe just get yourself a metal detector and take the dog down the beach and see what you can find. Listen, Reem, been an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for coming on. Reem Ibrahim, ladies and gentlemen, from the Institute for Economic Affairs. I'm sure we'll see you again soon. Brilliant stuff. We're looking at all the stories in all the papers, of course. We've got many, many more things to talk about, including fossil fuels, because we've got Catherine Porter coming up as a guest. She's going to tell us about a new report that she's working on, which is going to be published, I believe, on Monday. Tim Montgomery's going to join us from Reform. We'll get his take on what Nigel Farage was saying only yesterday about Ukraine and about what the problems are facing the armed forces in this country. You might also hear from Nigel Farage, who was on Times Radio doing Prime Minister's questions in his own way. People were very critical of him, but he said, look, the reason I'm doing it is because I can't get anywhere near a question during PMQs, and if I do ever get a chance to ask a question, I just get shouted down and nobody actually can hear what I'm saying. So it's all very childish. Also, Ben Habib coming up a little bit later on, and as I said, the after show today, and some of you are asking this question, and so I'm going to try and get an answer for you. Is it possible to make live comments when the after show live stream is going on? Apparently at the moment you can't do it. We'll try and fix that. We'll get an answer for you as opposed to anything else. Alien Warrior says the feng shui of the studio feels great now, Mike. Yeah, it looks fantastic, doesn't it? We've got a new sign. I'm sitting on the right instead of the left. I think it does work. Yeah, I know. It's fantastic. So listen, coming up next, we're going to hear from Howard Hughes. Sorry, it's not Howard Hughes, is it? It's Edward Hughes with the news.
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes. Yes, that's right, I'm back, whether you like it or not. UK weather, storm Goretti, Storm Goretti has intensified into what meteorologists are calling a weather bomb, bringing powerful winds, heavy snow, and widespread travel disruption across the UK. Westminster, pub tax U-turn drama. Over in Westminster, the government is doing what it does best, backtracking in style. Ministers are reportedly preparing to reverse the planned business rate hikes for pubs. International, Greenland, again across the Atlantic. The United States has, unprompted, brought up Greenland again, a country the US doesn't actually own, but apparently enjoys talking about.
We're back, and for those of you who are just joining us, it is now 7:37. We're going to be talking to Catherine Porter coming up in a little while. There's so much going on this morning. We've reached Friday, of course, and what that means, there's the clocks. What it means on Friday, of course, is that we are going to be doing, for the first time, live from this studio, well, actually not live from this studio, but we recorded it yesterday, Plank of the Week, the genuine article, and it stars Annunziata Rees-Mogg, it stars Russell Quirk, both of whom were in the very first Plank of the Week, which we recorded 6 years ago, just the other day, right, back in 2020. And we've also got a special guest, Steve N. Allen, the comedian, who joins us as well for the first time. So it's absolutely brilliant. It's great to be here. It's great to be around all of you. We're going to be doing Plank of the Day very shortly, but we will run you through all the various other stories that we have been doing because there's so much going on, which is trying to keep up with it all. And as I say, if you like the way the show's going, if you've got any suggestions as to how we can improve it, we'd love to hear from you as well. But shall we now look at some of the front pages as we did earlier? A lot of them are going with the pub U-turns. Daily Mail says pub U-turns too little too late. Labour's gearing up for another humiliating U-turn, the 12th U-turn that they've made ever since they actually started running this country, right? And we'll tell you exactly what happened. Special report as well in the Daily Mail, second by second, what really happened when Trump's ICE agent killed a mother of 3. And there's still huge rows going on over in Minnesota about that. And also there's been 2 more shootings, I think over in Oregon on the west coast of America, or Washington State, I can't remember. There's quite a lot going on there. Top defence chief on the front page of the Times is warning of a need for an extra £28 billion. And for those of you who don't care about the real world, the front page of The Sun has got Brooklyn Beckham sending his parents, David and Victoria, a legal notice warning they can now contact him only via lawyers. That's always a bit sad when that happens, doesn't it? The extraordinary desist letter also instructs them not to tag him on social media. Meanwhile, we've got Keir Starmer, of course, who seems to think that it would be a great idea for him to ban X. So give us your thoughts about that as well. Just before we talk to Catherine Porter and just before we do anything else, let's have another clip, shall we? Let's get Nigel Farage talking about Ukraine, because, of course, at the moment, because we're told that we want boots on the ground, Keir Starmer says he wants boots on the ground. Rab's just done a super chat there. Thank you, Rab. Also, if you haven't noticed it, we've got a ticket going across the bottom about Storm Goretti, which apparently battered the UK with 99-mile-per-hour winds. If it's bad where you are, do let us know. Take some pictures. Send them out because, of course, you know as well as I do that people love to look at weather pictures. They just do. Also, what else can we tell you about? Guidance on single-sex spaces delayed by cost fears. This is one from Bridget Phillipson, so we'll get intel later onto that. Apparently, she's delaying the release of guidance that would bar transgender women from single-sex spaces by demanding the equalities regulator calculates how much it will cost business. We'll come back to that in a minute. Let's hear from Nigel Farage, talking to Times Radio yesterday about Ukraine.
Prospect of a Commons vote on troops in Ukraine, Nigel?
Be a very interesting vote. I would vote against. We neither have the manpower nor the equipment to go into an operation that clearly has no ending timeline. If it was a sort of Korean-style UN where lots of countries were involved, and we could rotate in and out, I might consider it then. But frankly, what you saw yesterday was Macron standing there with the British Prime Minister. Giorgia Meloni was outside having a cigarette, not getting involved. We had the German gave a speech and said nothing. The coalition of the willing is just 2 countries. So this would be an open... Frankly, what this would be is a modern-day British Army of the Rhine. When we did that, defence was 5% of our national expenditure, and we were there for 50 years.
Nigel Farage, they're talking about the problem with trying to arm troops to go to Ukraine. We've said before, there's only literally about 7,000 troops that we could send there, because what I was talking to somebody about the other day was that if you are trying to mobilize troops, and you're trying to actually put troops into a place like Ukraine, even if it's just for peacekeeping, you basically need to have 3 groups of them. You need to have a group waiting to go in, you need to have a group in there, and a group who have just come back from there, who are being debriefed and being retrained and resting up and all the rest of it. So you need 21,000 troops, which is about all we've got, to go into Ukraine, in order just to have 7,000 there. And meanwhile, they reckon that in order to do a proper peacekeeping job, they'd need 200,000. And the army are now saying to Keir Starmer, we'll be 28 billion quid short already. I mean, it's just madness, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. But I'll tell you what, why don't we do, just before we speak to Catherine Porter, who's got some great things to say to us today about a fantastic new report that she's going to be producing next Monday on net zero and the madness of Ed Miliband. Before we do that, let us do, and I make no apologies for linking this, plank of the day. And there it is. Plank of the day today is Chris Packham. I was telling you earlier that the Daily Telegraph has got a piece on the front pages today saying that basically your dog can earwig what you're saying. So even if you're not talking to the dog and you don't think the dog's listening, the dog can actually pick up words that you're saying and remember them and memorize them and galvanize himself or herself so that she's ready, or he's ready, to go running out the door as soon as you say the word walk. You know, you see the ears pricking up, you know what I mean? And also, if you're careful and you're looking around the new studio scene that you're looking at, we've got the new neon sign. Ziggy is now much more possible to see. You can see him just over my shoulder there. And of course, the clock still very much in evidence. I've got to say, Pooch has done the most fantastic job here. I mean, I wonder if he's the new Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen. And I don't know what he's going to do next. You know, every day I come in, there's something else that's happened that's great. But here's Chris Packham, right? You know who Chris Packham is, all of you, I'm sure. He is the broadcaster and environmental campaigner. This is a man who has previously said that he would quite happily break the law. He's quite happy to support people who break the law in order to save the climate, people like those in Just Stop Oil and other organisations like it. He puts out a tweet yesterday, right? It says this: it's becoming increasingly obvious that dogs can thrive on a plant-based diet. Excited to be trying this out with my own poodles, Sid and Nancy, this veganuary with Omni.pet. First of all, I don't know who Omni.pet are, but it's obviously some kind of commercial operation that produces plant-based food for dogs. Now, I actually said, and I retweeted it with this retweet message: dogs are not vegetarians, you plank. Because they're not. You know, put a load of broccoli down in a plate and put a steak down and see which your dog goes for first. Robo Goat says Chris Packham wants his dog to get a twisted bowl. What a planker. He actually said a different word, but we'll go with that one. Super chat there from Brian. I love the news, but please stop the creepy AI face. It's not his fault that he's got that. Here's one from Cat Hunter. Mike, any chance the wonderful Peter Blexley will be coming back as a guest? Yes, he will be. Peter will be coming back as a guest. He's already offered to be a guest, but at the moment he's very busy with his live show. Ralphie says, just saw Ziggy's picture there. Very cute. Alison says, what a brainless moron this by Packham is. I can't see Sid and Nancy agreeing to a vegan diet. They want proper dog food, not the crap he's going to be feeding them. Absolutely right. And Nicola says, utterly cruel, poor dogs. Alex says this, what an absolute idiot he is. Animals need it. I feel sorry for his dogs. Well, if he's calling him after Sid and Nancy, you know, you might remember Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen, who I presume he's meaning, got themselves involved in a rather horrible murder-suicide in the Chelsea Hotel back in the 80s, or maybe, yeah, I think it was the early 80s. It was a bloodbath. So he's obviously got a very strange sense of humour, is old Chris Packham. If vegans insist on eating the food we feed our livestock, that makes vegans livestock. Yeah, I suppose you can eat them. Phil says, Packham just annoys normal people. Robbie says, naming his dogs after junkies says a lot. This is Packham. I bet they are, MG. Poor dogs. He has poodles. Of course he does. Only vegetarian if you make them. What a tit, says Mandy. So many of you commenting on the Twitter page, and you can find me, of course, at IROMG. You can find us as well on the YouTube chat, which is going lively, very well indeed at the moment. Loads of you watching. We've had a fantastic week, by the way. Several dogs have died after being given a vegan diet. We've just got a message there. It's an incredible scene. We've started this channel on Monday, basically. It's now Friday. This is the 5th live show that we've done. And I have to say, it's one of the greatest things I think I've ever done in my career. I'm very proud of Charlotte, our producer, who's been setting up lots of guests and making sure that all the graphics look tickety-boo. Pooch, who of course has set all of this up and created this entire channel. People are asking for pictures of Pooch. I'm not sure if you want to see that. It might ruin it. But anyway, listen, we'll keep up going with that. But here we are. It's 7:46. It's time for our second guest of the show, and it is the one and only Catherine Porter, a woman who's not only incredibly sensible but also rather academic, and so she's very smart for this show at this time in the morning. Catherine, very good morning to you.
Good morning. That's an amazing introduction.
Well, listen, welcome. We're all feeling very sort of fired up because this is our brand new studio. It's a brand new world. It's the Mike Graham Show, and we can basically do what we want. There's no constraints. We don't have to stop for adverts. We do have adverts. We just have to pay the bills and all of that. But you've got, let's kick off actually with a story that's in the Mail today, because you've got a big report that you want to tell us about coming up next week, which I'm going to hopefully be able to come and see. But a story in the Mail today, blow for Ed Miliband as fossil fuel use increases. Apparently, the UK increased the amount of electricity produced from fossil fuels last year, despite Ed Miliband's crazy drive for net zero. So it's not going very well for him, is it?
No, it's not. And we had the first 8 months of last year, wind production was down quite significantly, not just in Britain, but across Europe. Europe also had a really bad year for hydro. So all of us have just been burning a lot more gas in our power sector.
Yes, and I mean, it's rather ironic, isn't it, that we're here sitting and talking about the massive storm that came in last night, winds of 100 miles an hour, because you'd think if you were one of those aficionados of wind power, you'd go, oh, great, so we'll be able to power Britain now, probably for the rest of the month, on all of the wind power that we've been able to harness down in Cornwall. But it doesn't really work.
Yeah,
like that,
so
does it?
unfortunately, when the wind speed goes that high, they have to turn the turbines off because they're not safe to operate. And we don't have any way of storing that electricity, so it just all goes to waste.
Yes, and did we not learn as well just this week that the Scottish, some of the Scottish offshore wind farms have actually wasted most of the energy that they've been able to collect, and in fact they've been paid more money for getting rid of it and dumping it rather than for it to be actually going to good use.
Yeah, so specifically they were talking about Sea Green, but Sea Green isn't unique. So that wind farm opened in October 2023, and in 2024, 2/3 of its output was wasted. And apparently last year that number went up to 3/4. And so this shows we're actually deliberately building wind farms knowing that we can't use the electricity that they generate. This is because of a policy called Connect and Manage. And it basically means that you can connect the wind farm to the grid and worry about whether you can actually use the electricity later on. So there are some projects to try and build more grid capacity, but they're all being delayed. And in the meantime, we just have to throw this stuff away.
Yeah, I mean, it beggars belief, really. And I mean, I spoke about this earlier on today because of the latest U-turn, the 12th U-turn this government has made, and this is particularly to do with the hospitality sector. They're not going to hike prices and taxes for pubs after promising to do so. It seems like they don't have anyone in power in this government who actually knows what they're doing. They don't seem to plan anything. They don't seem to ask the question. I mean, who in their right mind, and I know the Tories were quite guilty of this as well, who in their right mind creates a system which pays people literally to do nothing, pays them in fact more money to dump energy than to actually supply it. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is, but I think we have to point in the direction of the civil service here for quite a lot of this. What's interesting is that when the Conservatives left office and no longer had access to officials, they had to start finding information for themselves, and they started to notice a disparity between the information that they found themselves and the things that they'd been told by civil servants when they were in office. There seemed to be quite a lot of former environmental activists working in DESNZ, DEFRA, Department for Transport, and other places relating to net zero type policies. And this is obviously having an impact. Then you also have that Gordon Brown introduced the Constitutional Governance and Reform Act back in 2010, just before the Conservatives came in the coalition. And this took away the ability of ministers to hire and fire civil servants. Right. So you've got this situation where the government really isn't in charge of any of this, and they're making decisions based on incorrect, incomplete and biased information.
Yeah, well, we found out yesterday.
I don't think the current Labour government's very interested in digging more into that. The Conservatives, to be fair to them, have done got a lot of work in the last year to try and correct their position. Reform, obviously, trying to put together an energy proposition that makes sense. But the current government doesn't seem to want to know.
No, they don't. Well, talking to people yesterday in the civil service, it became clear that they've said if reform does become the next government, lots of them will refuse to work with them, which kind of gives the lie to the idea that they're supposed to be impartial, doesn't it? Here they all are saying, well, if we've set up a net zero in particular policy, we are not going to reverse that, despite the fact that a new government would tell us to.
Well, so I think that Reform and indeed the Conservatives, for that matter, are thinking quite hard about this behind the scenes around, well, what will they do if they come into office in order to get stuff done? And it's pretty clear. I mean, you look at the current government and what happened with that football match in Birmingham.
Yes.
Midlands police said, "Oh, we're not going to allow the Israeli fans to the match." Cabinet ministers all up in arms. Keir Starmer up in arms. "Oh, this is terrible. We don't agree with this. You need to let them." But what was interesting out of that was that despite the strong opposition to the decision by the cabinet, they had to admit they didn't have any operational control over the police, which is crazy, right? We pay our taxes to the government primarily to fund things like the police, and then to discover that the government actually isn't in charge of the police is pretty shocking. So I think that Reform and the Conservatives are both thinking about how to restore accountability and responsibility within our governance structures, because if they don't, they're not going to be able to get stuff done. And civil servants, if they don't like it, they're just going to have to leave.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, and I think Reform are going to have to take a very strong stance. We're going to talk to Tim Montgomery coming up in a little while. We'll get his view on that as well. But let me ask you about this report that you're bringing out on Monday. I don't want you to give the game away completely, but do tell us what areas you're looking at and what you're able to let us know about at this stage.
So the report is about electrification. The brief was to examine our policies and targets to electrify heating, transport and industry, and then to see what impact it would have on the electricity grid if those plans all materialise the way the government would like. Now, I assessed the validity of those plans and whether they were likely to be delivered. I also looked at AI, because obviously that could be a significant additional drain on the grid, creating more demand. And then I looked at whether the grid would in fact be able to cope with this. And some of this I've written about before. My conclusion obviously is not. And the difficulty is that we know that we've got about 5 gigawatts of nuclear power stations that will close. The current date's 2030. I think a couple of them will get stretched to 2032. Now, you've got Hinkley Point opening, and we'll probably get some small gas generators opening as well. So that would really offset those 5 gigawatts that we might lose from nuclear. But unfortunately, a third of our gas power stations are now getting old. As part of the report, I did some research into the fleet, and I identified about 12 gigawatts that could be at risk of closure if we don't do something about it. And NESO, the National Energy System Operator, and the government have said, oh, we need to keep all our gas power stations so that when it's not windy or sunny, we can still keep running our electricity grid. If we lose a third of them because they get old, that obviously won't be possible. And the difficulty is now that because of demand for AI in the US and Canada, and because nobody really wanted to build gas power stations for a long time, the lead time to buy the equipment, say either to replace the rotors in the existing power stations or to buy new turbines for new power stations, well, it's 5 years for a new rotor, and it's about 7 to 8 years for a turbine. So if we don't do something about this now, then in that window of time where these old power stations could start to close, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. Well, of course.
And,
well, there's
and
a
the
story.
government is saying that this is scaremongering. It's not scaremongering. These are old power stations,
Right.
And none of this is secret. Right? It's completely public information. You can go and find out when they were built. And so the question is, what's the plan? If you say that we need, come 2030, in the Clean Power 2030 strategy, we need to keep 32 gigawatts of gas generation available for when it's not windy, and a third of that might close because it's old. What's the plan to
Where is the
to deal
plan,
with that?
Stan? I think it's a good question. I mean, the
Exactly.
Department for the Energy Secretary put out this yesterday, which was reposted by Ed Miliband. Congratulations to Heysham 2 on becoming the UK's top nuclear generator, a huge achievement for clean, reliable power, supporting energy security, skilled jobs, and our path to net zero. Nuclear continues to
Yeah.
play a vital role in our energy mix. I mean, again, that's kind of tinkering around the edges, isn't it?
Well, so Heysham 2 is going to close. Its current official closure date is March 2030. It along with Torness might be able to stay open until 2032. Hinkley Point is going to be delayed. The current date, I think, is still 2029 for Unit 1 and another couple of years for Unit 2. That's not feasible. It's not going to be open then. If everything closed on the current schedule, then by March 2030, you'd have none of the old advanced gas-cooled reactors left. You'd only have Sizewell B, which is the newer pressurized water reactor. And if Hinkley's delayed, which we think it will be, then when Sizewell's due for refueling, then we would have no nuclear on the system for the duration of the Sizewell refueling. So this is, again, the current plans are incoherent when it comes to managing this risk. Now,
incoherent is a very good word.
So, well, it's easy to say something like, there's retirement risk in all these power stations, and there's long lead times to buy new kit, and so it's going to be potentially a bit difficult. What does that mean in practice? It means that on days in the winter when there's no wind, and we have to remember that there's also no solar in the winter when it's useful, so the peak of demand happens in the evening, and obviously the sun's set by then, it's nighttime. So and wind can go down to very low levels. It can go down below 1 gigawatt. So there's 32 gigawatts installed. It can go down below 1. Now, this week, we've seen demand go above 50 gigawatts at dinner time. So that just gives you some idea of the numbers here, the relative numbers. Now, what does it mean if we lose a third of our gas power stations? It means that you don't have enough electricity to meet that 50 gigawatts of demand on cold winter days. And the only choice you'll have then is to ration. You will have to turn off some regions of the country to protect the rest of the country and avoid a full nationwide blackout. So this will be rolling blackouts like we had in the 1970s, because otherwise the whole country would go dark.
And I remember that because I'm old enough to remember it. And I remember I had to go to school one day a week in the morning only because they didn't have enough fuel to actually heat the school. So I basically used to spend 4 days of the week wandering around record shops and sort of and we had, and I say this to my kids and they can't quite believe it, that we used to have an hour of electricity in the morning so that we could make breakfast, and an hour of electricity in the evening so that we could make dinner, and the rest of the time we used to sit around with candles just talking to each other, which obviously led me to become a talk show host because I got very good at it. But there was literally nothing else to do, and it's
but
incredible
you're pretty good
to
at
me.
Scrabble as well.
But you couldn't really see to play Scrabble. You couldn't really see to do anything. But here's the other thing. Chris Whitty, I don't know if you saw this, ridiculously a bit earlier on this week, the former chief medical officer actually put out a statement about here's how you prepare for a blackout and what you need to do to have these things in the house. And one of them was low alcohol beer, so that you don't get too drunk and fall around in the dark. And secondly, mix some bleach with some hot water in order to keep yourself safe. I don't know whether you're supposed to drink it or throw it over yourself. I don't know what he's talking about. I mean, has the world gone completely mad?
That's pretty weird, because actually you can just buy water purification tablets. You can get like 100 of them on Amazon for about 20 pence or something. They're extremely inexpensive and they're obviously pretty easy to store. I went on my summer holidays.
Well, Chris Whitty, to be
family.
fair, doesn't even know how to buy a shirt the right size. So I mean, the idea that he knows how to.
There's many easier ways to do it than try and mixing bleach with water. And do you know how much you put in, and how do you avoid poisoning yourself? Water purification tablets. Just buy some on Amazon. So if you really wanted to do a sensible preparation for something like that, now I say to some of my friends who have elderly parents, tell your parents to put torches around the house, right? If you did have a blackout or even just a power cut, last night here we were having power cuts every few minutes because we were right on the very end of the wire. And so if you're elderly, you don't want to be stuck at the top of the stairs, for example, when the power goes off at night. That would be quite dangerous. So put a torch at the top of the stairs.
Good
put
idea.
a torch in the kitchen. one in the living room next, just way by your chair or whatever. Just have some, because they're cheap. And just make sure you change the batteries every now and again because the batteries can leak. But this will keep. What are the likely causes of accidents in the home if we had a blackout? It's going to be elderly people falling downstairs. It's going to be quite a big one. So just protect yourself against that. So there are various things that if you wanted to really give people coherent and sensible advice, and you thought there were going to be prolonged blackouts, then water purification tablets, get sort of storm lamps and things that you could. So you're going to reduce fire risk. In the blackout in Iberia in April, 11 people lost their lives. One of those died in a house fire because of candles. So and actually, very sadly, a report came out a couple of months back that looked at excess mortality data over those 2 days and identified 165 excess deaths that they linked with the blackouts. Because obviously mortality statistics go on a day-by-day basis, and the blackout started at lunchtime one day and sort of finished the following morning. So there were 2 days affected, and they said that a lot of elderly women, specifically in Spain, they believe then prematurely lost their lives as a result of the blackout. So this stuff is really serious.
Of course it is. Absolutely. Yeah.
Listen, Catherine, to prevent this sort of risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant to talk to you, Catherine. Thank you for joining us in our very first week of the Mike Graham Show. We'll see you soon. I'll see you hopefully on Monday for your report publication, and we'll catch up with you then. Catherine Porter there, who is, of course, as I say, a very, very sensible woman, talking about the dangers of literally running out of electricity. We've got Keir Starmer today talking about trying to ban X. I've got some breaking news here. We might notice we've got breaking news running across the bottom of the ticker here. Storm Goretti batters UK with 99-mile-per-hour winds is what it says. Heavy snow and power cuts. We'll have more from Edward Hughes in the news very shortly. But I've got this from Charlotte, who says Grok has turned off image generators for most users after an outcry over sexualized AI imagery. This is limiting editing function to paying subscribers after the platform was threatened with fines and regulatory action. So we'll see whether Keir Starmer will push through with his idea that he says he wants to actually ban X from Britain. Red Black says, I tried to give him a ham sandwich to a homeless guy, but he didn't take it because he was a vegetarian. I said he could give it to his dog, and he was told he was vegetarian too. That's ridiculous. I mean, if you're homeless and you're hungry, I mean, I would pretty much eat anything, maybe even the dog. No, of course, that would be wrong. No, don't eat the dog. That would be wrong. But listen, Tim Montgomery's going to join us very shortly. We're going to talk about reform. We're going to talk about the state of Keir Starmer, the 12th U-turn about to happen. It's on the front pages of all the papers this morning. Pub tax hikes are now not going to go ahead. They only announced them 6 weeks ago. Rachel Thieves, Richard III, this woman doesn't have a bleeding clue. 12 U-turns. They haven't even been in 18 months yet. Also, we'll be talking about what's going on in Minnesota because there's a huge backlash growing over this ICE shooting. We're going to play you a clip from J.D. Vance yesterday from the White House in which he absolutely slammed into CNN and some of the media coverage of the event, which obviously led to the death of a woman who was driving a car supposedly at 2 ICE agents, and she's been described by J.D. Vance as a domestic terrorist. So we'll bring you more on that. But let's now next get the news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes. Yes, that's right, I'm back, whether you like it or not. UK weather, Storm Goretti. Storm Goretti has intensified into what meteorologists are calling a weather bomb, bringing powerful winds, heavy snow and widespread travel disruption across the UK. Westminster, pub tax U-turn drama. Over in Westminster, the government is doing what it does best, backtracking in style. Ministers are reportedly preparing to reverse the planned business rate hikes for pubs. International.
Welcome back to the Mike Graham Show. We've got so much going on. There's lots of news coming into you this morning. Obviously, the weather is a big story. Lots of you waking up this morning to some snow, some ice, schools being closed, roads being closed, trains being cancelled, planes being shut down, airports going. Getting more professional, the studio every day, says Angela. My tuppence worth could be to get swivel chairs and get rid of Edward Hughes. Can't stand the video or the voice, but we'll keep watching you. You see, a lot of people have just joined right now, and we're watching, and you're watching a slightly new set. Here's one one from Mrs. A. Says, a great show already, but a couple of things to make it even better. We'll be taking phone-ins and maybe having it on an app or something where we can listen in the car. We're going to be doing all of this, right? But we're working it through as time goes by. But what you might notice is that over here is my new neon sign, the Mike Graham Show, which is a brand new development, which we only got yesterday. And so the studio is improving every single day. The technology is improving every single day with every step that we take. And we will be working on getting an app. We will be working on getting it as a radio signal so that you can listen to it in the car. We will also be working on making sure that anything that you ask us that you want to do, that we can facilitate it. I mean, for example, this morning, you'll find that I'm sitting on the right-hand side of the desk rather than the left-hand side because you all complained that it looked weird. And I'm delighted to say that on my left is Mr. Tim Montgomery. Tim,
hello.
Welcome to the new Mike Graham Show.
Great to be here.
And it's so good of you to come in through the mists and through the rains and through the dreaded ghastly weather. It really is dark and horrible out there, isn't it?
It really is. And when I was walking along this morning and my hands were getting colder and colder, I was beginning to think, was this the right idea to come in?
Well, we very much appreciate it. So thank you. Because it's always nice to talk to people, but it's always much nicer to talk to them in person.
You've done a brave thing, and I wanted to be here to support you.
That's very kind.
I've always enjoyed your show. You've always been a nice guy.
Yeah.
And so it's a pleasure to be here. And sounds like you've had a good start.
We've had a great start. Yeah. I mean, we've only been going for 5. This is the 5th show. We've got a great audience. I think we're about to hit about 3.5 million views.
Wow.
For the first sort of month or so that we've been going. And we're very, we couldn't be happier actually. And the great thing is that my audience is very loyal. And so when we've had the odd kind of occasional glitch or the occasional technical horror, they understand and they're kind of watching it and going, they've seen it growing already because we didn't have like the neon sign, we didn't have the clock when we started, we didn't have some of the pictures that are up, you know, and it's great, it's really good to feel like I'm building something and we're building something from nothing.
Do you remember when GB News started?
I do.
Everyone laughed at all their sort of technical problems.
Absolutely, yeah.
But actually it reinforced the sense that this wasn't a big budget, you know, established organization. Yeah. These were people starting to try and challenge the new, and you're doing the same.
Exactly.
So I think people will stand with you as you have.
I think this is also very much the future as well, and also what I do know and what I can tell you because I've worked inside the the mainstream media all my life. You can have as much technology as you like, and you can have as many engineers, and it all still falls over. Because it did quite a lot.
Content is always king.
Content is always king.
You'll be fine.
And what's brilliant is the way that content is now deliverable in so many different ways, like we can do this now. 10 years ago we could never have even dreamed of doing something like this.
Well, do you remember something called 18 Doughty Street? I set up this internet television station about 20 years ago with people like Ian Dale. The problem was, Mike, people didn't have internet that really worked.
Right.
And so I think we had about 8 or 9 people that were able to tune in and it not fall over after 5 minutes. Fortunately, we've moved on since then.
And that's the thing. And you look at something like ITV, I mean, they've just had to have a massive series of cutbacks. They've moved to a new studio in central London. They're not in White City anymore. And everyone's complaining about their set, saying it looks cheap, it looks nasty, it doesn't really look very good. They've had to fire something like 300 people. I mean, they've been producing very, very expensive television, and simply there isn't an appetite for it anymore. And ridiculously high wages for some of the so-called stars of stage and screen and all that. It's all a thing of the past. But you've had an interesting year as well, because you had that journey from being the founder of Conservative Hope, which was very much and still is very much the voice of sort of conservative England, if not Britain. But you've now found yourself on the side of Reform. You made that conscious decision. Reform's still very much leading in the polls, hugely. Nigel Farage still, in my view, kind of making all the running in almost every single political, manoeuvre that you can look at.
Absolutely.
I mean, I thought it was brilliant when he went this week to the Times Radio to do his own PMQs, because he quite rightly says he can't get a word in edgewise at PMQs. If he ever gets picked to make an actual question to the Prime Minister, he gets shouted down, he gets heckled by those horrible independent MPs behind him. And it's quite shameful, really, that it's almost like they're trying to prevent him being a democratic representative of his constituency.
I can understand why Starmer and that attacks him, because he is the principal opponent of the established parties. I'm surprised that the Speaker, the Speaker of the House of Commons, hasn't done more to accommodate the fact that, Nigel Farage is there. He may only have 5 MPs, but he's clearly leading in opinion polls and has done for about a year.
Right.
commands, 30% of the public at least. And if you really want, the Speaker always says, complains to ministers when they announce things outside of the House of Commons. Well, if he really wants the House of Commons to be the cockpit of the nation where it happened, excluding Nigel Farage from, having not necessarily an equal say, but a regular say, is nonsense, really, because more people are going to pay attention to what happens in Parliament if Nigel Farage and the other big beasts of politics have a voice there.
But also, he's so much more in touch with the ordinary people. I mean, look at the front pages today, and he was talking about this yesterday, the pubs of the UK, because he's a great man for a pub. I've been in many pubs with him, as I'm sure you have. But this U-turn from the government, gearing up for the 12th U-turn of their time in government, right? Extraordinary. Only 6 weeks ago, Rachel Reeves announced that these tax hikes were coming for hospitality, and many of the pubs actually reacted.
I hope you're not attacking Rachel Reeves, because that would mean you're a sexist.
Yeah, and a misogynist as well. Let's not forget. Because
cut that out straight away.
I'm terribly sorry.
You should be very upset.
My defence, of course, is always that, I mean, no, we call her Richard III because she looks a bit like Richard III. So technically speaking, I'm identifying her as a man. Therefore,
that's fine then.
I can't be being sexist. So
I was about to walk out of this interview, but I can now stay inside.
Thank God for that.
It's too cold out there.
Have a listen to this list of humiliating U-turns. These are the other 11, right? Family farm tax.
Yep.
Employment rights
bill.
bill.
For that, though. That was to destroy farms.
Keeping the 2-child benefit cap. Remember, they were expelling people from the party for disagreeing with them over that. Increasing income tax. Welfare reforms, junked. No more tax rises, reversed. A £28 billion green pledge, ditched. February 24. Grooming gangs inquiry. They weren't going to do it, then they did. Winter fuel payments came in July 24, junked in 25. National insurance rises. Labour promised it, said it would not increase national insurance, and then did, and help for the WASPy women. I mean, it's a list of shame, isn't it?
Well, it's extraordinary. And if you're a Labour MP, of course, we had the big welfare rebellion last year.
Yes.
And if you're a Labour MP, why wouldn't you rebel against this government? Because what this government does, it takes an unpopular policy position. You go out there, defend that policy position to your constituents. You get all the flack. Local newspapers and others attack you for being a patsy for the government. And then the government U-turns anyway.
Yes.
So you might as well not defend this government in any way.
Right.
And just be a rebel. And so that's why partly now the Labour Party in the government is just so fractured, because backbenchers have no incentive to behave.
Right. Indeed. And there's no real, I suppose, willingness to support a policy on the grounds, as you say, that, a year later or less, they might have just reversed it.
Yeah. But
it's a hell of a way to run a government, isn't it?
Well, I think both of us had low expectations of this government, but my goodness.
They've certainly exceeded them.
They really have.
Because I'm
genuinely shocked, and it's embarrassing for the country.
Yeah.
This is not a government that, I think it is actually the worst government I can remember. I don't know about you, but
it is. And in terms of
Ted Heath and Liz Truss, at least
also in terms of its incompetence, because it's almost as though, and I was saying this earlier to Reem Ibrahim, who was in this morning looking at the papers, it's almost as though they're not kind of wargaming any of it. They're not actually asking questions about what might happen if we do this. I mean, one of the things that happened when they announced these pub tax hikes was that pubs started a campaign and started producing these leaflets which they put in the window saying Labour MPs not welcome in a pub, and it really spread. I mean, we covered it a few weeks ago, and very enthusiastically, many more pubs, and of course, famously, everybody then kept playing that clip of the guy in Bath. Do you remember kicking his
pandemic?
Get that man out of my pub. I mean, that was just, and it's just one of those moments that Starmer can never get over, and you can't. And Starmer's so awkward. If he's sitting or standing in a pub, he doesn't look right, does he? He doesn't look like a guy that you could just stand and have a pint with. I mean, have you ever had any dealings with him on a personal level?
I met him just once, actually, in Glasgow. I was up there for a visit with the Centre for Social Justice. He was there. I just bumped into him at a breakfast at the hotel.
Right.
And he was perfectly pleasant, actually. I think he's probably a half-decent guy. But
which half?
The one that's not in number 10, I think.
Yes.
But he is clearly unsuited to politics. You know, to be prime minister is really hard. You have to have a mission. You have to be good at managing people. You have to be good at policy
Yeah,
design.
you have to believe in something, don't you?
But he doesn't have any of the
No.
qualities. You know, most prime ministers have one or two or a handful.
Yeah.
But he's completely unsuited. And you know, Labour aren't good at getting rid of prime ministers. They're not good
No.
like my former party, the Tories, at getting rid of them. But surely anyone would be better.
Well, I mean,
don't you think?
I've been surprised that he's lasted this long. As you
Yeah.
know, I mean, I was predicting his demise from about August of 24 because he so badly handled the whole Southport situation.
Yeah.
And that was the
That was an
beginning
early sign,
of
yeah.
the end. And it was an early sign that he was just, you know, a little bit too authoritarian, I think, for a British prime minister. British people are generally speaking fair. They're generally speaking tolerant. They're generally speaking willing to kind of, you know, accept that sometimes things are difficult. But he's made it really horrible for people, and he's made it, people are really struggling, you know, and yet he goes on when he did his big sort of, you know, long form interview with Laura Kuenssberg on Sunday. You would think he was living in a different country. He was talking about how we're turning the corner. This is the year we're going to feel richer. He's very proud of what they've done already. And you're kind of going...
It may be turning the corner. It just might be downwards rather than upwards.
Well, I think I tweeted out, you're turning the corner and there's a bloody great bulldozer coming towards you, which is about to wipe you out.
I know.
Because so many people have left the country. So many people in business are cutting back on business, getting rid of people. It's really impossible to get a job. Business confidence is down. You know, even look at the front page of the Times today. Top Defence Chief warns Starmer that we're a £28 billion short of money for the defences of the realm. This is at the same time that he wants to send British boys and girls off to Ukraine.
Well, can I just say, you introduced me as someone who left the Conservatives a year ago. You know, that is one of the reasons why I left the Conservatives. Of course, Labour have a difficult inheritance.
Yeah.
But how can the Conservative Party, the party of Margaret Thatcher, have left that national defence so badly maintained? I grew up in Germany. My dad was in the army.
Right.
You know, it was one of the proudest things this country did. Was, you know, defend the world against communism. But we cut far too deeply afterwards, and we have to rebuild our defences. And yet, what were the Tories doing? They were cutting national insurance.
Yeah.
I don't know what you would have done, but I would have kept those national insurance levels and invested in defence. There's nothing more important. And actually, you know, reports say if we were attacked now, we could probably defend Buckingham Palace for a few days, but not at the same time the House of Commons. We'd have to choose.
Yes.
And we'd only be able to defend Buckingham Palace for a few days.
I mean,
it's shameful.
It really is.
Shameful.
It is absolutely shocking. And you're right. And a lot of people who will never trust the Conservatives again, because I get this all the time, and I did get it when I was at Talk as well. You know, people like Robert Jenrick, people like Kevin Hollinrake, others who had been in government with the Conservatives. Nobody's really listening to them because they say, you were in 14 years and an awful lot of the problems that are now, you know, endemic in Britain were actually caused by you. And I actually did a podcast with Charlotte, my producer, who's watching us this morning, and we were doing Plank of the Decade, and I actually made it Boris Johnson.
I'm glad you've kept Plank, by the way. That's good.
That's going out tonight at 7 o'clock, by the way. By the way, I'll give you a quick time check. It's 19 minutes past 8, in case anybody's wondering. And we've got a new ticker going across the bottom. If you've got any stories for us about the storm, by the way, do let us know. But we decided, and I sort of voted Boris Johnson as Plank of the Decade because an awful lot of what, and I'm not letting Keir Starmer off the hook here, but an awful lot of what has happened to this country was the result of Boris Johnson's mismanagement of it. Because, you know, okay, COVID was tough, but he didn't have to do it the way he did it.
No.
Brexit wasn't done properly, even though he said
the green
he was going to get the green nonsense, the immigration problem, Boris Wave, you know, all of the things that have really caused Britain to be now on the brink and to become a much less powerful and much less wealthy country. You know, it was Boris who set all that in train, I think.
Yeah, no, Starmer had a terrible inheritance.
Yeah.
But they've made it worse.
They have managed to make it worse. It really is extraordinary. Now, let me take you over to the United States of America for a minute, because I want to play a couple of clips here. huge things happening internationally, and you do worry that Starmer's not the man to be fixing it up, because it was very clear at the weekend when Donald Trump sent in Delta Force to get Nicolas Maduro out of Venezuela that we were completely out of the loop, right? Britain was not consulted. Britain was not told what.
Do we know whether the Prime Minister's spoken to the President still?
Well, he said that they were saying that he's had 2 conversations with Trump in the last sort of 48 hours
since Prime Minister's question.
Since then, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But there's several things going on, really. I mean, obviously, there's the Greenland issue, which we'll get to. There's the Venezuelan issue, which we'll get to. There's Iran, which seems to be erupting into a sort of full-blown revolution. Hardly anybody's talking about it. I was listening to Times Radio on the way in this morning. They didn't mention it.
No.
And Donald Trump's been talking about it. But let's talk as well about this backlash over the ICE shooting, because that's what an awful lot of newspapers and TV companies are obsessed with. Because I want to play you a clip from J.D. Vance, who's the Vice President, who I think is an incredibly powerful individual and a very strong political leader. And this is, of course, all about the woman who was shot dead, Renee Good, in Minnesota, shot dead as she was driving a car, supposedly at a member of the ICE policy unit. These are the people who are going into communities and lifting immigrants out and shooting them off into holding pens and then sometimes deporting them. The result of this altercation was that she was shot dead by an ICE agent, right? But the media, as ever, has been very divided about, whether it's anti-Trump or pro-Trump. And CNN came out and were basically alleging that this woman was, an innocent bystander, But J.D. Vance made it very clear that they don't believe that that's the case. Have a look.
When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And I say attack very, very intentionally, because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day. What that headline leaves out is the fact that that very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile? What that headline leaves out is that that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation in the United States of America. What that headline leaves out is that that woman is part of a broader left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and to make it impossible for our ICE officers to do their job. If the media wants to tell the truth, they ought to tell the truth that a group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the President of the United States to do what the American people elected him to do, which is enforce our immigration laws. The President stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers. And part of that is recognizing that you people in the media, not everybody in this room, but many people in this room have been lying about this attack. She was trying to ram this guy with her car. He shot back. He defended himself. He's already been seriously wounded in law enforcement operations before, and everybody who's been repeating the lie that this is some innocent woman who was out for a drive in Minneapolis when a law enforcement officer shot at her, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Every single one of you. Questions?
J.D. Vance there, the Vice President, absolutely sticking it to some of the media, because the trouble is, like this country now, we find ourselves in this ridiculously polarized situation where, if you're anti-Donald Trump, you think that the ICE agents acted unlawfully and they shouldn't have ever killed the woman. And if you support Donald Trump, she's a domestic terrorist who needed to be done away with because she was trying to kill an ICE agent. Always like hearing from Tim, says Becky, 4958. Thank you very much for that. I've got a goal message here from Catherine, and to be honest, I'm not actually sure what a goal is, but it comes up and right to the top of the YouTube chat, and she says this: "Hey Mike, it's your 5th show and it is going incredibly well. Congratulations to all involved. So happy for you and us who still get to see and hear you every single morning." Well, absolutely right. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've got a couple of super chats, I think, to do as well. One from Lord Vader in Malaysia. Says, "New studio looks great, Mike. I would rather watch you in the dark than the mainstream media in some swanky studio. As a LD, I can say you do need a little backlight." What's an LD, do you think?
It's Lord.
A lighting director.
Ah.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, I mean, I quite like the dark scenario. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday after I went to the gym in the afternoon, and we went and had a couple of glasses of wine in a very nice wine bar not far from Marylebone. And he said he quite liked the idea of it being lighter, but I don't know. I mean, you tell me. We've got this new neon sign, as I say, which you can see. We can change the colour of it. Next week we might come back with a different colour. We can do it in blue. We can do it in yellow.
I think it should be turquoise.
Turquoise for Reform. I'm not sure if we've got turquoise, but we could give it a go. How are things at Reform? Because we're hoping to speak next week to a couple of Reform MPs. Sarah Pochin's going to come on, I think, at some point. Richard Tice will probably be here as well. Obviously, this week they announced Layla Cunningham to be the mayoral candidate, which I think is a great move for Reform. There feels like there's a momentum building, doesn't there?
There is. I think the problem for Reform is that everyone expects Reform to do so well in May's elections, in the Scottish, the Welsh and the local elections. It's almost going to be hard for them to exceed expectations. Whatever they do, it's almost going to be written off. And of course, if they slightly underperform, we slightly underperform, people will say, Reform are in decline.
Yes.
And I think that was part of the reason.
There was people started saying that they were sort of plateauing, didn't they?
Exactly.
Towards the end of the year.
And so I think it's really important that Reform, there's a big rally this evening at the start of the year with a £5 million announcement on social media spending.
Right.
And so one thing I think a lot of political parties do is they take voters for granted.
Yes.
One thing Nigel Farage will never do is that. And he knows you're only as good as your last election result.
Yeah.
And we've got to smash this, because if we smash the main parties this May, we begin to smash the old political system.
Yes.
And that's the beginning of change, Mike. So these elections, not a general election, obviously, but it's as close as important to a general election as I think we've had in this country.
Let's talk about the absolutely most ridiculous Keir Starmer decision, and he's enabled it. He may not have ordered it as such, but he certainly ordered some of it. 22 different council areas where there will not be elections, where people will be unable to vote, unable to make a midterm kind of choice, and unable to send a message.
Kemi Badenoch has gone along with this to some extent. Has allowed Conservative councils to choose to go to the...
I mean, it's a shocking state of affairs, isn't it?
It's amazing.
Because now there are people, certainly, in East Sussex, where I am, it will mean that there will have been no local elections for 3 years. Which is outrageous, really.
It is. But you know what? I don't think voters are stupid.
Yeah.
They know exactly what Labour is doing. Labour is trying to crush Reform.
Yeah.
Look at the fact that Reform has been given no representation at all in the House of Lords.
Yeah.
Before Christmas, they announced this investigation into foreign funding of political parties. They are going to use the apparatus of the state to try and hurt Reform in any way they can. Look at the never-ending allegations about racism towards Nigel.
Well, I was going to say The Guardian this morning, and I haven't really touched upon it because it's such a boring scenario. At the end of the day, basically, they've got a splash in newspaper parlance, the main story. 34 school contemporaries of Nigel Farage have now come forward to claim that they saw him behave in a racist or anti-Semitic manner. You know, I mean, he's already dealt with all this, and The Guardian is like flogging a dead horse.
And also, I wouldn't be in Reform if I thought Nigel Farage was anti-Semitic or racist. I've never seen any evidence of it whatsoever. But also, I love that George W. Bush quote. Do you remember that George W. Bush quote?
No.
When I was young and irresponsible, I was young and irresponsible. Everyone should be allowed. There'd be parents listening now.
Yeah.
They know their own children have made mistakes at school or whatever. That's where you learn. That's
So-
where you grow. That's where you improve.
I mean,
I don't know
I've
what the truth of these allegations
I've
is.
spoken to my own kids about this, right?
Yeah.
And they talk about how it was when they were at school and in the
Yeah.
last few years,
Yeah.
And people at school call each other names. That's what they do. That's how
Yeah.
school is.
Mike,
I mean, honestly, beneficiaries of the two-child benefit cap being lifted, not non-British families. And immediately Rachel Reeves actually made the wrong conclusion, jumped to the conclusion that he was talking about white British people. He was talking about all British people. So actually she was the one that was being racist.
But they don't learn, do they? They did it with Trump. They accused him of a racist, both the elections that he won.
Yeah.
It didn't work. So I'm going to tell you a secret,
Mm.
Mike, just between you, me,
Yeah.
and your viewers.
Okay.
If Labour want to beat reform, it's very simple.
Mm.
Stop the boats.
Yeah.
Keep your taxes down. Make this country the country that it used to be again. Strong.
Yes.
Confident. Fair.
Yes.
Do those policies.
And reward people.
Attacking Nigel Farage as racist, all this personal attacks, people have had enough of them.
Yes.
They want this country to be better. They've got to do their day job. If they do the day job, reform won't have a chance.
Yeah, and also
the problem is they can't do the day job.
But also reward people for working hard, because the sense that ordinary people in this country, I think, have, and these are people who run businesses or who work for a living, and there'll be people out there listening to this now, driving around in the snow, in the dark, working 2 jobs, getting up at 5 a.m, feeding their families, not taking any welfare, just working as hard as they possibly can, sometimes getting a second job. But these are the people who are seemingly getting punished, because it seems as though the best way to get a reward under this Labour government is to not do any work at all. As this from Sarah, who says, I'm a local councillor reform and I'm a normal person and I'm doing this for my grandchildren. Don't discredit all the good people out here. Well, I don't think we were discrediting anybody, certainly not any councillors from reform.
Perhaps referring to what Keir Starmer's doing.
Yeah, I mean, what we're saying is that it's a disgrace that the government has allowed local councils to cancel the elections. I mean, that's what we're saying is a disgrace. I'm sure that every councillor who's going to run in an election is hopeful that they will win. But as Tim says, whatever happens, if reform don't sweep every single board, and I don't think they'll sweep the board in Scotland, they probably will in Wales, but they won't win everything. And then again, you'll have these kind of, ridiculous people saying, well, they've obviously hit the wall. That's the end of that. Have you got any plans yourself to sort of pitch up as an electoral candidate?
No, I've never really wanted to be a candidate, but I've always been a little bit of a sort of bloody awkward squad, really.
Join the club.
I think you and I are primarily journalists, aren't we?
Yes.
And if you're journalists, you can't be absolutely loyal to a political party all the time. You have to, your listeners and viewers won't trust you if they think ultimately you're the mouthpiece for Nigel Farage or anyone.
Right.
They want to
and I'm not.
hear you. No, you're
Funnily enough, Ben Habib, who some people don't like, some people do like. I mean, the great thing about having this job is that whatever we do, somebody complains. Like they won't like the colour of the neon sign, or they won't like the plant, or they won't like you, or they won't like the way that I'm pointing, or they love Ben Habib, or they don't like him. He's coming on later on the show. What do you make of the Advance UK sort of movement? Because that's made up of a lot of people who seem to be a bit disenchanted, if you like, with.
Well, one area where I am with you completely, Mike, is on Tommy Robinson.
Yeah.
Tommy Robinson, 90%, 95% of what he says, I agree with. He's right. But there's a thuggish element to him that means that any political party that embraces him is foolish.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why Ben Habib, someone I respected for a long time, why he's got into bed with Tommy Robinson. I'm surprised.
I think he will say
you should ask him.
I will. I mean, I think he will say in his defence that he's not embracing him. He's just somehow unable to stop him from being associated with his own. Yeah, I don't know. Well, we can ask him when we see him. But listen, it's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
Lovely, and thank you so much for coming in and joining us in our first ever week. Hopefully, we'll be seeing you much more once the weather gets a bit more clement.
Yeah.
And we'll be also doing a lot of different shows as well. So Tim, you'll be very welcome to come and join us on shows which are slightly later. Because we're planning on doing a show at midday as well, which will go out for an hour, which will be aimed to some extent at the American market. So we'll be doing a bit of that as well, because they love to hear, apparently in America, about how Britain's going down the toilet. And then, funnily enough, talking about toilets, I don't know if you've noticed, but outside Vauxhall Station, and this came as a bit of a shock to me. There's a public urinal, but it's open air.
Oh.
So you can basically just stand there and pee in the street, effectively, behind a
Oh,
wall.
Peter Mandelson.
Mandelson probably has it on his on his phone, so he knows exactly how to get there. Unfortunately, there wasn't one in Notting Hill. But there are things that you see now around Britain and around London and around parts of this country. Rubbish. Streets not swept, not looked after. There is that whole broken window syndrome thing going on, and we need to get it back. We need to get the country back. We need to somehow reclaim our pride, and we need to reclaim, as you say, what this great country used to be, because it feels a bit lost at the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's one thing primarily why I do support Nigel. He could have easily walked away from politics. He was a huge success even before he became Reform leader, but he's come back because he loves this country. It's why I'm involved in politics. It's why most people are involved in politics. And my goodness, this country needs a lot of love and a lot of rehabilitation.
It does, absolutely right. Tim Montgomery, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Tim Montgomery there, ladies and gentlemen. It is, of course, coming up now to 8:36. Top UK breaking news headlines on January the 9th are these. Storm Goretti batters the UK with 99 mile per hour winds. You can see we've got a new ticker there. Heavy snow, power cuts as well. Tens of thousands of homes are currently without power down in the southwest of England, particularly in Cornwall. Rare red danger to life warnings have been issued. There's a lot of trains not running. There's a lot of roads difficult to pass. Parts of the southwest and airports have been closed as well. Runways with a bit of snow on them. Absolutely ridiculous. Craziness, right? But also, the big story on the front pages this morning, pub U-turns too little too late is what it says on the front page of the Daily Mail. Cheers. It's another too late U-turn from the Prime Minister. The 12th U-turn by this government since they've been in power. Rachel Reeves only announced these tax hikes 6 weeks ago in her budget, believe it or not. Richard III, there he is. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, and we were talking about the defence of the realm, top defence chief warns of a need for an extra £28 billion in order that the Ministry of Defence doesn't run short of money in the next 4 years. And this is for a company, or rather a government, that seems to want to spend billions and billions of pounds in Ukraine, sending money to Ukraine that we can't afford to do. We'd like to take your view on that as well. Let's do a few super chats and some messages. Really appreciate the huge improvements to the presentation in just 5 days, says Steve. And that viewer feedback has been listened to. The set lighting, ticker news, larger clock. Mike sat on the left of the screen. More clocks, of course, coming. We will be getting some of those clocks that make it look what the time is in Johannesburg. What a great bloke Tim is. He speaks the absolute truth, says Sue. Well, very, very nice.
Thank you.
Well, I can't tell you this morning, know what's happened, but the sound has gone. Maybe it's not your part. I don't know. It could be the weather, says Carol. Yeah, it could be. I mean, we're not getting too many reports that the sound is not good. How about this from John, who says the news with Hughes is the next big thing. It is the news. And simply just turn down the volume when the AI newsreader comes on, says Laurie. Listen, it's dividing the nation, this whole thing about Edward Hughes, the news, because, of course, one of the things that he's been instructed to do is not, under any circumstances, to text anybody while he's reading the news, because that would be entirely wrong and he'd have to be fired for that. If the sound goes down, just refresh your app. That's the message from us, actually. Great. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up, let's get the news with the man himself, Edward Hughes.
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes. Yes, that's right, I'm back, whether you like it or not. UK weather, Storm Goretti. Storm Goretti has intensified into what meteorologists are calling a weather bomb, bringing powerful winds, heavy snow and widespread travel disruption across the UK. Westminster, pub tax U-turn drama. Over in Westminster, the government is doing what it does best, backtracking in style. Ministers are reportedly preparing to reverse the planned business rate hikes for pubs. International, Greenland, again across the Atlantic. The United States has, unprompted, brought up Greenland again, a country the US doesn't actually own, but apparently enjoys talking about. That's your news. And remember, folks, don't be a plank.
Despite the fact that there might be a lot of about do not be a plank. Actually, And we haven't done it today, but we will do it, because what we should be doing today, because of the fact that Plank of the Week goes out tonight at 7 o'clock, and we filmed it yesterday in the company of Russell Quirk and Annunziata Rees-Mogg, both of whom were in fact the first ever guests on Plank of the Week 6 years ago. And it was this very week 6 years ago that we launched it, right? It's been going for 6 weeks. This is the first ever new studio version of it from the Mike Graham Show, which goes out tonight. And also we're joined by Steve N. Allen. And what we will do is on every Friday show, we'll have a little clip for you so that we can play it out, which will give you an idea of what to look forward to. But we've had so much going on this week. Pooch has been so busy that we haven't been able to get on top of absolutely everything. But everything that you want, any questions you have, just keep asking them, and we will still try and work our way through it. As I say, when we started this week, we didn't have the neon sign that says the Mike Graham Show. I was sitting on the left, I was sitting on the other side. We were doing different things. We didn't have the clock at the bottom right of the screen. We didn't have the ticker tape, which is going across the bottom either. So it's been quite a journey already in just 5 days, and so many of you, so many tens of thousands of you have watched the show live, and so many hundreds of thousands of you have watched the show afterwards, because one of the things that we are doing, and today I'm delighted to say that we're going to start having much more interaction with all of you as well, because we're talking to a woman by the name of Rachel on the after show, which comes out after 9 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock in the morning rather, when this show is over. And the after show this week has been so far a selection of different people. We had Andrew Montford from Net Zero Watch talking about how ludicrous the whole Ed Miliband project to turn Britain green is. We had Connie Shaw yesterday from the Free Speech Union talking to us. We've had a whole series of experts giving us a lowdown. We had Will Geddes earlier in the week, security consultant, talking about how to make your phones and other devices safe from being hacked. We've done all of that, but today we're going to take a slightly different tack, because what we're going to do is tell your stories, because that's what we really feel is so important that we can do on this show that no other shows can do. Because, you know, those big mainstream media, shiny, polished, and sort of news programs where they talk to people for about 3 minutes and then they move on to something else. We like to take a little bit of a deeper dive. We like to take a little more time to listen to your stories, to listen to your experiences, to listen to what's going on in your life. Because it's not just about politicians, it's not just about what they're up to, it's about what you're up to, it's about how your life is being affected. How about this super chat from Andy, who says, now we have the truly independent view of Mike Graham, erudite guests, evolving set, humour, a perfect antidote to the misery dished out by this current mob. Well done, Mike. Thank you very much for that. So yeah, so coming up after 9 today, we're going to be telling the story of a woman up in the north of England whose mother is currently in hospital, who has been in hospital for several weeks, and who has been treated miserably, negligently, terribly by a local hospital in Oldham, right? And Rachel is going to tell us the story of exactly what she has been through, what her family have been through, why she wants to tell everybody else about what's wrong with the NHS in this country. Because while we get Wes Streeting going on and on, banging on about how great the NHS is and how they're going to change it and how they're getting 5 million more appointments rushing down the pike and how they're reducing waiting times, none of it's true, right? And everybody that I talk to, because we did this before we went live, if you remember, we used to do pre-recorded shows which we put out at 7 o'clock on the live stream, and loads of people watched them, which have contributed to our very nearly 3.5 million views so far. And basically, whenever you ask people for questions and answers about their experiences with the NHS, you very rarely get good experiences. Yes, you sometimes get some, and yes, we all know there are some good people that work in the NHS, but by and large, the NHS is a busted and hopeless system that doesn't work, that doesn't in any way take care of patients, doesn't treat customers as if they are customers, and treats them very, very poorly. And we'll be telling the story of Rachel's mum coming up after 9 o'clock. Super chat from Kazaz22. Thank you very much indeed. Lots of you are letting us know where you are, by the way, as well. In many parts of the world. We've had people viewing from Japan, from the Philippines, from Australia, from Canada, from the United States of America, from Dubai, from all kinds of corners of Europe, from France, from Spain, from the Canary Islands, all over the place, because we have got a genuinely international crowd, and I'm so delighted to be able to share that with you. A couple of other stories to talk to you about. Dogs can learn new words. If you've got a dog with you, see if you can teach him a new word or her a new word, just even while we're on the show today. We'll do some more messages for you in a minute. I respect Ben Habib. He's a lot more wiser than people give him credit for, says Georgina. Rupert Lowe needs to join up with Ben, and if so, they will win the next general election. Sarah says, just to say the show is now more relaxed and it's on its way up. Hats off to Mike for overcoming the recent rubbish against him. And one from Karen, who says he deserves credit for his part in exposing the rape gangs, of course, but other than that, I feel he can't come back from some areas he touched on before. Mike's sound is great today, says John. And here's one from Reverend Redeye. Ben, I'm not bitter and jealous Habib. You see, some people like Ben Habib, other people don't. But we'll be talking to Ben Habib coming up next, right here on the Mike Graham Show. But before we do that, let me play you another clip which we put together today. This is a guy called Nick Shirley. Now, one of the reasons why the ICE agents are in Minnesota is because of the scandal which is currently enveloping that particular state. You might remember that Kamala Harris's running mate, who was going to run for the vice presidential job, it was the governor of Minnesota, and he's of course very anti-Trump, and he's been talking about why he believes that the ICE attack and the ICE shooting was something that should never have happened, right? But this is a story about Minnesota and corruption at the end of the day, because the story that came out that got everybody worked up was that there was a whole bunch of wholesale fraud going on in the Somalian community, because Somalians were supposedly being given money by the state in order to run nurseries. And it turned out that an awful lot of the nurseries that they claimed were nurseries, that they were claiming money for loads and loads of kids, were not actually running nurseries at all. Like a lot of public sector problems in this country, in America, you get money and nobody checks whether you actually deserve to get it. So let's have a look at Nick Shirley. This is the guy who uncovered the story in the first place on a Minnesotan Somalian fraud. Check it out.
This one is different because, according to the state of Minnesota, this 312 West Lake Street houses not one, not two, but three child care centers and is licensed to hold 102 children, and in fiscal year 2025 was paid $2.66 million by the state of Minnesota.
And this is the building right here. So this building alone made $2.6 million. Let's see if anybody's inside. Now we're inside of the building where there's apparently 4 child care centers.
We met this lady and we followed her to the back of the building where the daycare was supposedly at.
So right here we have 2 child daycare centers. We have the Minnesota Child Care Center, and then we also have Nuna. Between the two, $2.66 million. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Why are you recording?
Yes. We would like to know.
Well, it says we're trying to figure out 102 children. Is that for this facility?
What is the name?
It's from the state of Minnesota website. It says you have 102 children here in your child care.
Which child care name is a lot of
Minnesota Child Care right here. It's from the state of Minnesota's website. We're just wondering where the children are.
Where the children are?
Yeah, where are the children? It says you have 102 children here,
Okay.
and you got $2.66 million this year in funding, and $2.5 million last year. We're just wondering where the kids are.
And who are you?
My name's Nick Shirley.
Nick Shirley.
And where are you? Which department?
Oh, we are from ourselves.
Yeah.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going. Look at that. Shut us down. Where are the children at? No children inside of this daycare center. And look at this daycare center right here. No children inside of this daycare center. But between those buildings, over $2.6 million.
Yes, and there you have it. I mean, that is probably one of the finest pieces of investigative journalism that's been done in recent times, either in the United States of America or indeed here. And once again, Donald Trump is addressing issues which are upsetting a great bulk of people in America, because America is a country built on immigration, let's face it, much more so than Britain ever was. But it's been built on immigration for people who have worked hard, for people who have come into the US and made a business for themselves, made a life for themselves from all over the world, whether it was Italy, whether it was Ireland, whether it was Poland, whether it was anywhere in Southeast Asia, whether it was anywhere in South America. The general idea was that everybody who came into the country worked hard. And that was as well what it used to be like here. but of course we now have a problem with people who are coming into the country who are not necessarily working hard and are making use of what is a very lackadaisical sort of welfare system, as you saw there in Minnesota. But let's get on to that, plus many other great subjects, with Ben Habib, the leader of Advance UK. I'm delighted to say he joins us now for the first time on the new Mike Graham Show. Ben, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Can I just say how reassuringly familiar and comfortable it is to be chatting to you first thing in the morning? It's been a while.
It has been a while, and I appreciate you coming on, and thank you very much for being a guest in the very first week of the Mike Graham Show. It's been going pretty well. I've got an appearance on your podcast coming up, which I don't know if you can reveal when that's coming out, but hopefully sometime soon. Let's kick off, if we may, with the United States of America, because seeing that report there about the Minnesotan kind of Somalian fraud problem, you sort of look at that with a wry eye, if you like, and imagine that there's probably some of that going on here.
Some of it.
Yes.
I mean, we've got that problem. Of course, the system is being abused, but the system itself is rewarding people for not working, rewarding foreigners for not working. We've got 1.5 million people, as I'm sure you know, 1.5 million people, foreigners, on benefits costing this country £10 billion a year. We've got 8 billion a year going on illegal migrants staying in hotels at the care of the government, you know, having their food, their NHS, their dental bills being paid for them, getting cash in their back pockets. And these are all part of government programs. That's before you get onto the fraud. You know, one thing we mustn't forget, that was very instructive, as you say, excellent bit of investigative journalism. But what we mustn't also forget is that a lot of people coming in from North Africa, the Middle East, and these other third world countries are actually being put into effective slavery when they get to the United Kingdom and the United States. They disappear out of the system. They disappear out of the welfare state. Even though some abuse it, some disappear out of it, and they are exploited by others. The whole thing has become a complete dystopian mess.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible how sort of much out of touch this government is with what's actually happening on the ground. It's almost as though, you know, watching Keir Starmer's big interviews at the beginning of this week, he's got his fingers in his ears and he's kind of going la 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 la. We're you know, we're fixing the foundations, we're fixing the economy. You know, we're all going to get richer apparently in 2026. We're going to somehow get people out of migrant hotels by, you know, 2029, but we might have to give them houses to live in. Meanwhile, they're still arriving by their hundreds, even in this weather. There doesn't seem to be anything that the government has a handle on when it comes to the immigration mess that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are two significant fundamental underlying problems. The first is that the government doesn't actually know what it needs to do in order to rectify the problems of the United Kingdom. It doesn't have a view on how to do it. It doesn't see illegal migration as a bad thing, as illegal. Even Starmer refers to it as irregular migration. He can't even get his head around the correct word to describe it. And if you can't describe the problem, you certainly can't fix it. And behind that lies a whole panoply of legislation, the Human Rights Act, the Equalities Act, all the regulations behind diversity, equity, and inclusion. That entire mindset defeats the government's attempt even to understand the problem. And if by some miracle they were able to understand the problem and try to protect the country in some way, actually the second major fundamental issue that they have to face is that they have a home office, border force, other public services that are simply not fit for purpose. They are broken. And I'm staggered by the number of mistakes. This is a small point, but it evidences it. I'm staggered by the number of grammatical and other mistakes made in letters that I receive from the government and in their public pronunciations that they now make. They're literally falling apart. Standards have gone to knout. And so if you don't have the political philosophy, you don't know what needs to be done, and you've got a bunch of numpties employed by the government, you've got no chance, have you?
Well, you really haven't. And I mean, I've been doing this for quite some time, and Downing Street hate it. So I'm pleased to say that I'm going to continue to do it as much as I can. I always look every day for the first tweet that's put out by Keir Starmer from Downing Street. It usually goes out around about 8 o'clock. He hasn't actually done one today. So maybe he's, lying there in the depths of depression with his head under the duvet going, I've got nothing to say. But here's what he said yesterday, right? I won't apologise for lifting almost 500,000 children out of poverty. I won't apologise for putting money back in people's pockets. That's why we are scrapping the two-child limit. Now, first of all, he used to be against scrapping it, and he was kicking people out of his party for saying that he was wrong. But not only has he done this as a tweet, he's actually been then accused by readers adding context that he's misleading the public because he's ignoring that the claim is not a fact, merely a forecast. The Institute for Fiscal Studies assesses that the forecast is optimistic and is certainly no silver bullet. The actual impact of removing the limit will depend on the economy and parental behaviour, and it will end up costing the government, and i.e. the taxpayers, millions and millions of pounds. So we're literally being gaslit and lied to by the Prime Minister.
Yeah, absolutely. And lifting the two-child benefit cap doesn't go to the money doesn't go directly to the children. It goes to parents, and it depends, as you said in the closing remarks of that statement. It depends on parental behavior. If the parents choose to spend the money on their children, then that child may benefit. But of course, the parents may just choose to pocket it, and it just becomes another scheme where the parents have children in order to be able to get the benefit. And as implausible as that might sound to some viewers, actually a lot of people will do that. And the essential problem here is that the benefit is rewarding bad behavior. You're getting benefits to bring a child into the world that you couldn't otherwise afford. And really, what they should do if they wish to increase the rate of procreation in the United Kingdom, the birth rate in the United Kingdom, is to give tax breaks to working people so they can afford to have children. So it's people who are working and contributing to the economy who actually get the benefit, not those who are sitting at home who are already on the welfare state. We've got to cut this dependency on the state, and we've got to give people the tools by which they can then manage their lives, including in how they've managed their family life, how many children they have, and so on.
Yeah. And in terms of immigration policy, if you like, Advance UK is a growing party. You'll have an opportunity in May to extend your kind of your number of councillors. I'm not sure how many you have now. Maybe you can tell us. But in terms of what you would do, Ben, if you were able to control immigration, how would you actually do it? What first steps would you make?
Well, we are announcing our draft immigration policy on the 7th of February at an event in London. If people haven't signed up for that, I highly recommend they do. And we've got a whole massive list of steps we're going to be taking in order to address migration. And there are, of course, two facets to migration. There's the illegal migration, and then there's the mass legal migration, both of which need to be borne down on dramatically. As far as illegal migration is concerned, and indeed to some extent legal migration, but particularly as far as illegal migration is concerned, the first thing you've got to do is eject the body of law, international law and domestic law, which defeats our ability to enforce our borders and detain and deport people who are in the country. But the overarching policy with illegal migration will be to stop the dinghies in the channel, turn them around, send them back to France. Those people who are in this country illegally, and some put the numbers at well over 1 million, will be detained and then sent home. And if we're unable to send them home because we don't have deportation treaties with the countries from which they came, or we can't identify the countries from which they came, they will either stay in detention until we can repatriate them, or the countries which refuse to take their people back will face some kind of trade or other sanction from the United Kingdom. And that's illegal migration. Removing, of course, all the benefits and all the favors that they get when they're in the country. And then as far as legal migration is concerned, we've gone from a system which used to bring in only the highly skilled that we needed in our economy in very small numbers to a system where we are taking in everyone from across the world. We say unskilled labor, they're not even labor. We're just taking in people in their masses. And the first thing we're going to have to do there is put a complete moratorium on that form of immigration. We have to remove benefits completely from foreigners. And that, by the way, includes 7.75 775,000 EU member state citizens. So one of the other issues we're going to have to address is the withdrawal agreement, which gives the right for EU citizens to get benefits in this country. That has to change. We have to then incentivize British workers to fill the jobs that immigrants used. And so we've got to cut back the welfare state, which I've touched on before, and give tax breaks to people who are working. We have the highest tax burden since World War II. That needs to come down. So we need a holistic approach. As you might have seen, I've painted a kind of integrated picture there of all the various steps that are going to be required to stop illegal migration, stop the need for mass legal migration, and give people in this country the tools by which they can then fill the gap created by the immigrants who are no longer working in our economy.
Great. Listen, Ben, we're out of time, unfortunately. We'll have to get you on again to get into some more depth on some of the other policies and some of the things that you've got planned coming up in the next few weeks and months. But good to see you. Thank you very much
Good to see
indeed.
you.
Look out for
Thank
your
you.
podcast with me on it. I'll certainly be looking out for it. And we will see you soon. But thank you. Ben Habib there,
Look
leader
forward
of
to it.
Advanced
Thank
UK.
you.
We're out of time, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a fantastic show. It's been a fantastic week of shows, actually. It's 9 o'clock, just after. We've got so many great new developments coming. We'll have even more coming next week. Any more suggestions that you've got for us, by all means make them. And if we think that you've got something, we will agree with it. This one from Marco's Magic. I really like the way your guests are here to support you. I guess you view guests differently when it's directly attached to you rather than a network. Not at all, actually, Marco, because I always viewed my guests with great respect. I always viewed them with great importance, because without my guests and without the show and without you, the audience, I wouldn't have anything. So I treat people well. If I get somebody on here and wants to argue with me, I won't be doing that. So we can look forward to some of that soon. Coming next, though, and there's the heron. That's down in the Seychelles, sent in to us by Paul, I think it was. He's on holiday down there. Coming up after this, after the 9 o'clock hour, we're going to be doing an after show with Rachel, who's going to tell us her tale of woe from the NHS and how bad her mother has been treated by the NHS since she's been in hospital for the last several weeks. We will see you tonight as well with Plank of the Week at 7 p.m. Don't forget to join in on that. That's going to be brilliant. And we've got so much stuff going on over the weekend as well. And all the Substack viewers will know that there's lots and lots of stuff to view on the Substack. If you haven't joined in, it's themikegrahamshow.com. We will see you later.